Yeah, call a meeting of the select board for June 10th, 2024 at 6:30. Order, review agenda for additional removal or adjustments, and I know Valerie got a small.
Yes, under the downtown designation renewal, if we could add the street closure request for Pocock Rocks. That information is posted on the website. And also the minutes of, well, the back minutes that got overlooked to be listed on the agenda. So May 13th, I think, and what was the other one? Anyway, additional minutes.
We should put it somewhere.
And that would be under 4.
February 26th and May 28th, I think is what you
Yeah,
sent.
yeah,
today.
February 26th.
But you wanted one more, you wanted that, May, what the other date you
May
wanted?
I had, she sent May 28th and February 26th.
They're on.
Today. Okay.
Yeah. And then there was the ones carried over from the previous
From the
meeting.
previous.
Carry over. Okay.
Those are February 26th, May 13th, May 20th, and May 28th.
You got February 26th here, so May.
Yeah. 13, 20, 28.
20, and the 28th you got written down, so those two dates, May 13th,
Yeah.
20 you want to add.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, overview Zoom meeting, you got anything else, Jess, or anything?
No, that's-
Okay, overview of Zoom meeting operations and procedures, rules for participation, we're all hats at this, 4 years in. Mute your microphones, recognized by the chair, etc. Public forum, 5 minutes per person for anything that's not on the agenda.
I have a reminder for the MAUSD budget vote is tomorrow at your local polling place. The Bristol's upstairs in Holly Hall, and polls are open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. So please get out and vote.
Right, regular business, continued consideration of quote from Sargent's Welding and Crane Service for installation of movable rails on the universal fishing platform in Eco Park.
All right, Roy, you're up.
Come on up.
Okay. Can I share my screen?
Oh, yeah, can you make him a co-host?
You are the host of it, so you should be able to. But if you're not, I can.
Oh, it does work this time.
Yeah, you're the boss.
Oh, it's.
There we go. Okay. Can you all see that picture?
Yep.
Okay, so here's the repair fishing platform, and we're going to talk about the railings today. So you can see the railings from afar. We're looking upstream here. Just wanted to use a photo or two, and here's a zoom in of the railings. Again, we're looking from downstream edge to upstream, and then probably the most important photo. Here's a post-flood December photo. I can't remember who shared this with me. Kristen, maybe you. See you nodding your head. And so we've built a new access way with FEMA dollars with a proper foundation, buttressed it with stone, and that's all repaired and things are looking great out there. And we always had a plan to make the railings removable. In our discussions, as we've gone to the doctors who manufactured the metal pieces of the platform, they got some apprehension and said the railings are really heavy, and sort of balked at our plan to try and get the railings or some portion of the railings off the platform, with the idea that when river flows over it, the debris and ice will pass over the platform, and making it less complicated to maintain. And also we believe that a combination of the upstream boulder moving a little bit and also pressure on the upstream railing combined can cause that upstream bracket to fail. So we want to try to get rid of the debris loading and pushing. If you look at this corner, the upstream corner carefully, right in there, you can see a gouge in the metal from the railing deflecting. And these are like thick metal tubular railings. So the force of the river, we know, gets strong. So then, as we were again talking with doctors, and then they started balking a little bit about safety, which is understood. So we said, well, can we manufacture a way to close the railings so the two on the end could swing in, and we'd have essentially a barrier to accessing the platform from the front, as well as we'd have a gate to lock the fishing platform for safety reasons. And then we wouldn't have to have people unscrew these things and pick them up. Now, there's a couple ways to do this. One is to create sleeves on the sides, and we've been talking with Randy Sargent, who you all know does metal work in the area, and he came up with an idea to put some posts and hinge these things so they could just swing closed, a lot easier to manipulate. As we talked more, we sort of landed on a hybrid, which was removing the upstream and downstream railing. And as you can see from the view here, looking right upstream, most of the debris gets caught on that upstream railing because it's essentially perpendicular to the flow. The railing on the outside edge is parallel to the flow, doesn't catch as much debris. And then the railing closest to us in the photo, again, is perpendicular and would catch more debris. So our thinking was to simplify this and try to expedite people moving the platform from flood mode to use mode and back and forth. We would just deal with the upstream and downstream railings. And I heard from Valerie that the select board had some questions about that. So just wanted to give a little backstory how we landed here. I think we could take these off, all of them. We could sleeve the outside railing as well, and then they would have to be removed and put on, and then a bolt would have to be tightened to lock those railings into place. And if I go back one photo, let's see, you can't really see it here, but we inserted 2 galvanized posts at the head of the railing that we would lock these, at the head of the walkway, excuse me, that we would lock these railings to. So A, they don't walk away, and B, they act as another layer of deterrent to keep people from coming onto the platform. So now there's a fence, we have a gate, maybe a gate at the entrance of the fence, and also a gate sort of halfway down the access path. So the town could feel better about making sure people don't obviously like just stumble onto this platform without railings. It's gated off. So I guess that's my little introduction. Would love to hear the comments and people's thoughts.
One concern that was expressed about removing all of the railings, particularly the outside railing, was about safety, because without that railing there, when it comes time to put the railings back, there's nothing to hold on to.
Yeah.
That folks trying to install the railings, because they are heavy, it could cause people to just fall off the platform while they're trying to put them back in. And so the idea of keeping the outside railing in place, it serves as an anchor to hold on to while the other rails are being moved into place.
You're saying the one that's perpendicular to
The one that's
water.
parallel to the water.
This one right here.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't think of it the last time when we talked, but because I couldn't see it, but now that I see it, I'm wondering if we'd be better off to fold the 2 sides to the front if we're gonna leave the front, so we only got one rail for the stuff to get caught on.
That's a good idea.
I mean, like fold
I was
them,
thinking the
fold
same.
it
Fold
flat.
them
Towards the, into,
Right.
towards the front railing. I know your idea of putting across the back to make a gate so they can't get on the platform, but I worry about that long log that's on the far end there is hitting on both ends.
Yeah.
right, what's in the blue stone and on the sidewalk there, that one.
Yeah,
Peter, I agree.
so if they folded to the front rail as opposed to making another rail in the back. I do get the idea that the safety idea of a gate, but I just think that it's gonna give us more to get stuff hung on.
Mhm.
Great.
Yeah, agreed.
So for the hinging aspect, are you looking at having each side be just hinged on one axis, or are they hinged in the middle as well?
Well, it's a little hard to see, but I think you would hinge them, well, the original plan was on the corner, but now that I hear and look at this with you all, maybe trying to hinge it out here and folding them out so there's one railing. It's a little hard because this side has an acute angle, so it wouldn't freely swing by this one. So you'd have to
Right.
like have a gap, have a break in the gate. So this folded as well. So the whole thing would swing closed. So this would close, the picture is distorted because I'm looking from the side, but this gate would about close and meet this point right here in our original concept. And then this gate would have to fold in half and then swing.
Hello.
Hold on, right, we're
What's
having
going on here?
technical area.
My typing buttons. Okay, right, because so that angle, it can't hinge. There isn't any space for it to hinge. So you're right, it would have to hinge at a point before that.
That's
and
right.
fold in on itself. I would, when we talked about this last week, I went up there because I dropped my kid off at school and drove back and looked at it. And that's when I looked at the angle and was like, that can't possibly work.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I have a lot of concerns about, as you brought up, the taking them off, putting them back, the timing of that. Like, there's going to be a potential rain, the timing of getting someone up there or two people up there to do it. I honestly think the safest thing to do is to just leave the railings as they are. And I know that is probably going to cause problems, as we can see from this photo, but it seems like we could potentially be risking people's safety installing and reinstalling these rails, no matter how light we made them. Even if they hinged, it's still, you have to, more than likely, it will be Eric and his crew that would need to go up there and make these adjustments potentially before a storm. Oh, we're in the middle of a storm, can you go do that? And that doesn't seem right to me.
If you were to do what you were talking about, Peter, I mean, it does leave it open for people to get on there, and I don't think that's a good idea, for whatever, but if you were to put them the other way, you would have to figure out, like, the railing on this side, you'd have to put that one in first and the other one, because if it's in second, water and debris coming down might get
hook in it and swing it around.
swing
Yep,
it back
yep.
around.
Plus, if people want in it, they'll just climb right over it. It's not like that's like
Right.
Fort Knox or anything.
Right, and the fact that we put posts on this thing back here makes no difference at all. I mean, I guess if you're in a walker,
Either
it would
you're-
prevent you.
Either you abide by the rules or you don't.
Right.
Right, exactly. I mean, it's just so open, on the platform, definitely, you have to deliberately have to sort of climb down or whatever, or just climb over the railing, but then you're making your choice. And I was thinking, like, could you design something where all the railings could be hinged down, but then the weight of that, how would you actually physically do that and bring them back up? And it could potentially just cause more problems as stuff drifted down. I don't know. The only thing I thought of when I was up there last week, and I don't know what the regulations are, the only way to defer or move some of this water, this stuff coming down, is to put some sort of barrier in the rock that sits before our platform and have
Some
that
kind of flow.
have that catch the brunt of it before it hits the platform.
Almost like a snowboard.
Yes,
Well, but-
yes,
But that's a great idea, but when the water is almost the height of the road,
correct,
Well,
all those logs are on the top,
Yes.
and anything diverts gonna.
correct, yeah. There's no easy way. It unfortunately, even though it's a great platform, it just happens to be in completely the wrong place for this kind of weather. It's great for fishing, but
What,
any kind of storm, this is what's gonna happen.
Yeah, and anything we divert from there, it's just gonna hold up downstream.
Yeah.
well, yeah, but we don't have any platforms down the street.
Yeah, but there's a whole lot of other things, the
We have a great-
bridge or whatever.
We have a great big one,
That's true.
half that
Every time
size
you move
right
it,
at top of
something
Martin.
else happens.
I mean,
Kids talking about
our concern, Jill, you bring a good point in terms of, okay, when it's as high or higher than the railings, stuff will still come over, but the likelihood of it potentially ripping out the foundation of it in the rock is maybe lessened if we had that kind of buffer before it, perhaps. But I don't know what the rules are. I know we can't sort of divert what's happening to the river, but I don't know if we can place material there that would act as a buffer, or can we drive in some sort of railing system that would be ahead of this, because there are some pretty good stones there, including what it looks like some sort of poured concrete foundation as like a railing before our railings that would catch potentially a lot of this stuff before it even hit this.
They get really nervous or really
Yeah, the
excited
state.
about you messing with
Yeah.
where the river wants to go.
Well, if we're not doing that, can we drill and sink in metal posts to boulders that are already there? There is like a foundation there. I don't know what that is, if we put that in or if it's just been there.
There was I think
Bridge or
that there was a store there up on the flat at one point
Oh.
that had a concrete wall.
Okay, so that's
On the
that's what that
riverside,
is.
yeah.
Okay, I mean, it's there. It doesn't look like it's moving.
One factor to consider is that we're on the tail end of our FEMA funding.
Yeah.
And they've given us an extension to September. They're very particular about changes to the scope. And if we propose a change to the scope at this point, that could draw out the time needed to get their approval and then actually get something done. So we
What's the scope as stated right now?
removable rails.
Okay.
And it wasn't specific, so we didn't provide to them a very specific detail of what that was gonna look like, so I think we are within the range with this conversation.
With the hinging
I had a
Yeah.
question though about the horizontal pieces. Could the horizontal pieces be replaced with that like wiring that you see on decks now? You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So that you keep the posts in place, but you remove the wire that goes through the posts. And then you would all you'd have to do is, wire that.
It would still catch, but would
But it would only be
more,
the
would
post.
would more, yeah, would more flow through.
Well, it would either flow through or it would break.
And it still doesn't get
Right.
around the who's gonna do it and when.
Right.
Well, right,
Right.
but wiring it
Yeah.
would be a lot
But
quicker and
You
easier.
don't think if we stuck another post a foot off of that corner and
The
hinged
back
it
corner, the
off
far corner?
The far corner. And hinged that and had this one hinged so it felt folded inside it, that it wouldn't be a whole lot easier, and I know it's gonna leave it accessible.
So you're talking the post right up into.
No,
No, the
no,
other,
on the other end,
yeah. right
right,
there.
right there,
Yeah.
yeah, so,
Have this hinge this way and then
yeah,
after this one,
no, that one, yeah, after that one goes in
so they're
first.
locked together.
Well, so that the downstream one can't get hooked,
Right.
it would be protected
That would
behind.
that would have to be folded in first.
What's the possibility of putting another one right here and having the two posts here? So from here to here, it hinges back to the wall and then this little short piece
It's still
swings in.
gonna catch. Let's
Oops,
see,
sorry.
No, I think we're stopped sharing.
Oh, I did, I'm
Or-
sorry.
no, I
I'll
asked-
go back. It was easier to see you all.
What if-
We're just pointing at the TV here.
Right.
Okay, good, sorry about that.
When did you take that picture? And who cleaned that mess up and how did they clean it up? Or do we know?
The Conservation Commission cleaned it up.
Oh, yeah. like
Yeah.
10 times.
Group of volunteers.
Mhm.
Okay,
This
so
was,
did you do that with a
after-
piece of equipment? Or
It was
by
after,
hand?
it was after the December floods of 2023. And 4 people from the Conservation Commission with 2 chainsaws removed that debris within about 3 or 4 hours.
I guess I asked the question is, Roy, can you show the one that's nice walkway, the all grassed in the way it looks now? Can you get a piece of equipment like an excavator down there?
no,
No.
Not, you'd be
You'd have
putting
to
it
go
on
over.
the cement sidewalk,
Yeah.
and it's not wide enough.
what?
Where I'm going with that is-
Yeah, that's what.
Where I'm going with that, or we just have a cost every year, we set some dates and we have a crane set all 3. So you don't lifting them, you just, in an hour's time with the crane sets up, I know you don't get those, that's probably gonna be $500 a crane for an hour at least to set those. And pull them with a crane and just 2 people walk out there. And then when they come to put them back in, they just guide them into the holes.
Then the crane swings and poof, off into the river you go.
No, you're
Well,
not
I think
hooking the
he's only
crane.
saying,
The-
take the
Each
2
bracket.
ends.
Yeah.
No,
the
all
2
3.
ends.
You're gonna have a crane do all 3, pull all 3.
Yeah, but then you're leaving it open for people to go out there and,
Yeah.
Well, you gotta have a gate across
I,
I mean, I look at the platform that's 5 times higher than that at Bartlett's. There's a platform just like it at Bartlett's.
Yeah, but that's not
That's been there. We didn't
created
put
by
it
the
in.
town, yeah.
Well, no, it's owned by the town, but it's not created by the town.
yeah,
I was just wondering, it's an expense that,
Here's the posts at the end.
see, there's a post at the end, so you can't go down
Yeah,
there.
well,
Yeah, that's
you
gonna
could
be
put it, you
gated.
could put a gate across
Yeah,
there,
with a
but they can
chain
walk
that says
around there.
closed. Closed for
But
the
that's
season.
what, but
Yeah.
at what point,
Can you fix
at
it?
what, at what?
I'm sorry.
At what point are we not liable for people's actions?
right.
I
If
mean,
you put a sign up and
You're
say
not
you
into
can't use it and they do, then
It's
it's their
closed.
fault, right?
Well, they can and they will.
Right.
I mean, I
Yeah.
just,
Yeah,
there's only so much, you're right, there's only so much we can do, but.
I mean, it's no different than a sign that says swim at your own risk.
Right,
I mean,
and people do. Yeah, I think, I don't know,
I
I'm,
mean, if we're gonna leave them, I'd like to see them hinge the other way, so there's only one to get caught on.
Right, and they come down, they hit that three squares,
Yeah,
and the
they
logs just kind
spin
of
one
spin
way,
around.
spin
and-
one way or the other
I
and keep
agree.
going. I don't think that, you know, I think that one on each side, if they folded to the front side of the platform, to the side
The
you
river
get
side.
on, no, to the side you get on,
Oh,
I
okay.
think you're gonna create an area for more
Right,
stuff to get
catching.
caught.
So you want them to swing towards the riverside, that one,
Yes.
yes, that's what
I mean, that's my thought. I'm not,
So that there'd be 3 rails parallel. to the
Correct.
river?
correct. You'd have to take the,
The lower
on
bit, yeah.
on the leading edge, on the upstream side, you'd have to put another pole out
Mhm.
a foot or whatever, so that that one hinged and the downstream side could be inside it, and then nothing would.
That actually
Catch
might
it.
strengthen the outer assemblage from getting damaged.
I
But
guess
you
we have
still
to
have
check
to-
the structural load on the platform to make sure it can handle that weight.
Oh, right, right.
you still have to have one or at least 2 people go up there to do this.
Yeah.
And I don't know.
Well, the question is like, when do you do it? Do you
Right.
just say, okay, at the end of the summer, I mean, we may have summer
I
storms.
mean,
that
it's
we can't-
no
but it may
different
be-
than when we do our parking ban or whatever. We
Well, no,
set
but
a-
I'm just thinking, you can say, okay, come October 1st, we're gonna go and close it down and, or November, whatever it is, and leave them for the winter that way.
I think if
And
it's,
then open it back up after Memorial Day or whatever.
well, I think if it's a fishing platform, if you can't fish in the river until May, I don't know, second week of May,
I have no idea. what
second
the rules
Saturday
are.
in May until the second or third Saturday in October, they come out after that. It's a fishing platform. You can't fish in the river anyway, so.
Another thought is that making whatever improvement we come to might not be any different than just leaving them the way they are, and if they never get moved. I mean, build the installation, build the capacity to do it. If they end up not getting used the way they could be, we're right back where we are, which is where we are. But if we don't do anything, then we're right where we are. So I guess it's a question of, what kind of
Right.
effort can we make? It might not always work, but it might work a lot of times. And, it's better than nothing, but if we don't do anything, we're right back where we are.
But I think that sometimes that might be the only way to do things. My concern with the hinging, even with the 2 of them, is that for at least half the year, that platform only has one barrier on it.
Mhm.
And that's the town platform. It's not like it's a rocky outcrop that you could fall off of. People will go down there and they'll play around and they could potentially fall off. At least now, with them there all the time, there's a fairly decent chance you're not gonna fall off the platform.
We close it during the winter time? I mean, do we actually put up a
Not yet.
chain?
Not yet.
Yeah, but I mean, we can put up the signs in terms of liability, but it's our responsibility to look after it and not create, I know we're worried about it being dislodged again, but is that worth the risk of someone going down there and not reading the sign or not caring about the sign and then somehow falling in?
Well, it'd be no different than somebody going down there now and climbing over
Over
and
the
standing
rail.
on the outside.
I
I
know.
mean, I just,
But-
like I said, at what point
I know.
are we
You need,
But I-
you
but I
need to
think
put
I-
signs up, enter at your own risk,
Right.
period.
Right, but also too, I think if it, for some reason, went to court, I think we'd have a stronger case by saying there are permanent barriers on that platform versus it's an open platform, and for half the year, it just has one barrier on it, and the two sides are open to the water. That's my concern, and also I think the timing of how to do it. Looking at the past storms we've had, they've been throughout the year, and that'll probably continue. And so we'd have to figure out a whole schedule of when do we send Eric and crew up to put them down, and how much warning do they get? And then you're running the risk of something happening as they do it. You know, as I said, is it in the middle of a storm?
If they're in the middle of the storm, they don't touch it.
Right,
No.
but it is another thing to add to the list. Me personally, I think we should just leave it as it is, unfortunately.
Kristen, do you have an opinion?
It's a difficult call. I was just reflecting back on when we've experienced the most damage, and it Ian's right, it has happened throughout the year, but generally it's in November, October, or during January or February thaw, when we get snow melt associated with rising water levels. And so having a season of open and closed platform, I think, could address maybe most of the damages. But I also hear Ian's point about liability. I like the idea of rotating them to be parallel with that front riverside railing. If we were gonna have removable or movable railing.
I don't know, Ian, I understand what you're saying, but it's no different than, how is it any different than the traffic light out here? We've got walk signals, and if somebody chooses to walk across without pushing the button and walk when the signal's not. I mean,
Yeah,
where do we as a society assume liability for somebody being foolish?
well, with this particular thing, we're, for a certain period of the year, we're making it more dangerous. We're deliberately making it more dangerous. And that would be my concern. It's
Without
like-
any promise that
right.
it will work.
Yeah, it's like if half the year we decided to tape over the walk signs for whatever reason, right? We were making it more dangerous even though before it wasn't as dangerous. But I know it's like, it's very easy for anybody to get on the platform, climb over there and muck around.
I mean,
Yeah.
the thing we could do is just say it's closed from November 1st to May, whatever. And that's when you put the rails back and you put the signs
Yep.
up, platform's closed,
Mhm.
you know, do not enter.
It's just unclear to me that it's going to be effective. Like, it seems like a lot of extra work and resources. When you look at the pictures, it looks like a lot of the trees are hitting the platform itself.
This is the 4th time we've done this
Right,
with this
And it's-
platform. We fixed it
never-
4 times.
but never with the rails off. So
No.
is it,
It's always
like,
we've kept
It's
the
always
rails.
been the rails. I mean, the
Always
rails
been
have
the-
always been on it,
And they've
Right.
always caught the
the
debris.
debris.
but we don't know if it's
If it was
hit
just
from
the
below.
front, we
Right,
wouldn't-
like what you're
No,
saying at
we
the
don't
end
know.
is
We
what's
don't know.
left.
We don't.
So it's sort of unclear.
And we could do everything and Mother Nature could
Do
come down
something
through and
with
clean
it.
it right off.
Absolutely.
Right, a huge tree could come down, hit all three of them.
Or rip the whole
Yeah.
thing off.
Yeah.
Is it complete, is the cost completely covered by what we have from FEMA?
That's our understanding, hazard mitigation.
I mean,
And
I
if we
guess it
don't,
doesn't- it
if
doesn't
we
hurt.
don't mitigate it, are we eligible for funds again?
Well, here's one, if we
Future.
do this, if we decide to do it this way, doesn't mean we always have to close them, but the option's there.
That was my point. That's
You
true.
know, if we don't do it, you don't have that option. I mean,
And
you
somebody
can try
else is,
it,
somebody else is paying for it now. Well, we're paying for it.
but, I
Just
mean,
a
it
little
gives you
bit
the
for each of
option
us.
to try and see what happens. You know, if we do it during, if we close it for, like, let's just say we're gonna close it this winter, see what happens. And if it works great, then you know, okay, this is what we're gonna do every year. If it
Close
doesn't
it
work,
with the rails up or close it with the rails
you know,
down.
with the rails down.
But so the first
the
thing would
rails
be to
folded.
check the structural load to see if all
Right.
3 rails can be on the
Mhm.
one
Because
end,
it
right?
does overhang a lot. It's not
Right.
directly under.
Roy, how would that happen? What would you need, or what would somebody need to do that evaluation about the the weight bearing capacity of that far side of the platform?
I think I could talk to Randy about that option and then talk to a structural engineer. Or even call doctors and, because they know the loading on it. One thing I just wanted to add, just I was listening to all the conversation. Our original concept was to remove the railings, and then we were starting to, there was talk about safety, so we were fearing we'll leave one of them. And then we were learning like those railings are like between 200 and 300 pounds. So like the feasibility of somebody really moving those is not good. But the idea of hinging them, and Randy seemed pretty confident that that could work, seems like you could literally go up there on a quick notice and either open or close them. So you wouldn't have to do like it's open, like it's closed down, the railings are off for 6 months. I literally think you could swing them open, pin them in place, and then go back the next day if the storm passes or whatever, and put them back on. So in this approach, you limit your window of risk maybe when the railings aren't up on the platform. So I thought his idea was really good from that perspective. And we kind of thought this all through and said, again, and I don't know what the liability is, but like if we can put up signs and a few layers, then we feel like we're doing our diligence on, someone can get out there at any point and do anything and get anywhere. But if we create a few barriers, that was our thinking, that we could deter them. You wouldn't drift on their app unknowingly, then all of a sudden be in a risky spot without being aware you were going to that spot. So just want to share some of the background conversations.
Sorry, right. Can we bring up the picture one more time?
Right.
Sure.
Can you bring up the picture?
Of the debris?
Well, yeah, the debris one.
Everyone.
No, you're answering my question. There's too many rocks there. That downstream one is going from the sidewalk out to the stream. Can't fold that out down towards the stream. So it would basically tuck underneath that platform where the water's going up, but it won't. There's too many rocks there.
What about the option of going with lighter weight material for the railings and make it so you could remove them completely easily, maybe with a 2-person crew? Has that been discussed?
Yeah, the lighter railings and the wire were discussed, but remember, this is supposed to be ADA accessible, and there's weight limits and force limits so people can lean on these railings. So I'd have to sort of check to see how lightweight we could go, and then that gets us to the issue that we said we would adjust these railings, not necessarily replace them. So we'd have to look into that a little further with FEMA to see if that's eligible.
I'm not sure
And then I
we
think
spend the
what-
money to replace them.
If you're sending people out there to pick them off, you're in the same boat again, whereas if they swing,
Yeah.
they're always,
Hanging
They
on to
should-
something.
well, that, and they should be on the inside once they start to open.
Right.
They'll be on the inside, so
Right.
they'll be
Although that's
protected.
something to consider if they find that it can't hold the weight of all 3 sides on one end to make them lighter, but still compliant, would solve that problem.
Sounds like
So
we need
first we have to check.
more time.
We need the weight
Well, I
bearing
think-
check.
I would like to see, I know that Randy's written it up, but I think I need to see more detail. It doesn't seem like it's fleshed out enough to actually know what's going on. I mean, Randy might have it in his head, but I guess I just don't want him to start working on it and then realize like, oh, I should probably do this, or this isn't gonna work now. Like, I think I
Well,
need
he's
to
not
clear
gonna
it.
do anything until the select board says go.
No, I know. It's just, yeah, it doesn't seem clear. And I don't know, does that mean drawings? Does that mean, detailed measurements? Maybe, I'm not sure, but it's more time, obviously.
Roy, what do you think is possible before the next meeting on the 24th?
I mean, I think we could, I think we could have like a quick sketch illustrating the approach, and for the 24th, I could tell you if the loading is acceptable. I'm pretty sure it's going to be, the more I look at this, because the loading on the platform is if you put a person in every square foot, and that would be way more weight than the railings on the end. So I guess maybe I could talk to Randy, we could sketch something up just so you can get the concepts down.
That would be great. And see if that changes his
pricing.
proposal at all, in terms of timing and materials and all that stuff, fabrication.
For his proposal, how much of the original railing was being used? Yeah,
Mhm.
it was just like a cutoff in the tubes. and things
Yeah,
like that.
you just add in the two posts on the extra two posts on the end to make them be able to hinge there to swing them towards the sidewalk.
Okay.
And then, the long rail is gonna split it, make that hinge twice.
And how are you keying in the middle of it, where it's now welded to the platform? Don't you need to key that in, or are you just relying on the two ends to provide the support?
It was gonna be on the ends where they come to the railing by the river.
Right.
Gonna pin there.
Okay.
And then one spot in the middle
Okay.
was gonna be able to go up against last time that we talked,
Yeah.
was gonna go up against a plate and you're
Okay.
gonna pin it.
So it's mimicking where it's welded now, because it's
Similar.
welded at like 3 or 4 points
Yeah.
throughout the
Similar.
each sides. Okay.
Should just be a pocket for it to go in and a pin to hold it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I was asking for drawings, but other board members may feel that they have enough information, so don't necessarily.
Spend thousands of dollars on drawings. You can say it.
Right, no, I mean, yeah, if other select board members are fine with going ahead and have a fairly clear idea, that's totally fine.
There's no thought of what I thought of just setting them every year with a crane.
I think it's an expense that,
I
You
agree.
don't need to have,
and like Roy says, if we decide we wanna put them up, if something's going on or there's gonna be a function there, we can go up and we can swing them out for a day and swing them back, so.
I like that idea.
I'd like the swinging part better than the crane, but, I'm not sure it's gonna totally work, but I hope it
we're
does.
not sure of any of it, it's gonna work.
I'm sure this is the last time I'm voting for anything to put that platform. If it goes again, we're moving it. We've got to. 4 strikes, you're out. I thought it was 3, but 4 strikes, you're out.
Okay.
Okay,
So it
So
sounds
Roy,
like this
guess-
is to be continued.
Does Roy have everything he needs
yeah,
from
do you have
us?
everything from us?
Does this work for you, Roy?
Sure, I guess I'll reach out to Randy and we'll try to sketch something. I'll brainstorm with him, sketch something up, and then check in on the loading.
Excellent. Thank you, Roy.
Sure.
Thank
Thanks,
you,
Roy.
Thank you, Roy.
Take care.
Okay. Oh, item 3, public hearing downtown designation application renewal. Courtney Ratford, Bristol Core Executive Director.
You're up, Courtney.
Hello, how is everyone?
We,
What's that?
Do you really want all the
Hold
answers?
on, I can't. Hold on.
Okay, I'll hold.
Was gonna be next, is that incorrect? That's what.
The water hearing,
no, there's a connection, water commissioner, water
Am I
service
not
connection
reading the right
application, 29
agenda?
Edgeworth Way, Direct Jeffrey Lungsteed.
That's me.
Right,
Yeah,
it's not.
it's just not on the
not
agenda,
on
it's
the
on your
agenda,
TA
but it's
report.
on-
No, it's on the, it's 3 number 2,
Yeah.
Yeah. It's down here.
below the
I'm
below
reading
the
it.
water and sewer public hearing.
So you're up in a minute. Okay.
Okay.
well, it's more than a minute.
Or a few, yeah, more than a minute, I'm sorry, yeah. It's a ways. It's down here,
Yeah.
is this not the agenda? I'm
Well,
reading?
no, I was just confused because on mine, it's got, on the TA report, it says item 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then it says item 4, public hearing. So I was just,
Well, the meeting was originally or it's intended to start at 7, then we added the other item as a regular business item. We kind of threw things up,
All right.
the
Sorry,
sequence of things.
Okay.
Jeffrey, sorry. Go ahead, Courtney. You got
Okay,
something to
hi
add?
everyone. Yes, I haven't met everyone, so I'm the new executive director for Bristol Core, and I'm here today to ask for approval to move forward with our renewal application to keep Bristol as a designated downtown. And we've been a designated downtown for 18 years now. Our last renewal was in 2016, and they've maintained the pattern of every 8 years. So this renewal will keep us as a designated downtown until 2032. There will be an interim review point 4 years from now, but after we go through this process and we get approved, we will remain a designated downtown until 2032.
They need a motion from us.
Ultimately. But she's got
Yes.
some information and
Okay,
updates to
okay.
help update the select board and the public on the outcomes and benefits of the designated downtown.
Okay,
Yes, I
go
can
ahead.
share my screen.
Yep.
Okay, can you all see this?
Yeah, first,
Okay.
yeah, we're still in my TA report. I think.
Yes, so these are, by being a designated downtown and staying part of the state program, these are the benefits that Bristol will continue to have. They're mainly related to historic tax credits. So you can see them here. And as Valerie shared, she circulated this document already. And in order to apply for this renewal, these are the things that Bristol Core will need to submit. And the town, I'm also working very closely with Valerie to submit the pieces that are on behalf of the town. But Bristol Core, as the designated downtown organization, came together last month to put together an outline for our 5-year strategic plan. I'm happy to circulate that. It's very much in draft mode right now, but I can share with you all the high level goals that we plan to include in our plan. They are, oops, sorry, that's not the right document. I have a lot of things pulled up. The downtown designation follows the Main Street model, so we've organized our goals in a similar way. So we have some design goals, or a design goal with lots of objectives underneath that. We have a promotional goal, an economic development goal, and then we have some goals for Bristol Core as the organization, how we're going to maintain our organizational sustainability. Any questions for me?
Any questions from the board?
No,
No.
that's great.
It's a good thing to do.
Yeah, exactly.
No, oh,
Yes.
yeah.
The group's been there for 18 years in
Yeah.
various forms. And luckily they've moved this every 8 years versus every 5 years.
Mhm.
You know, I did it once when I was the executive director, and it's, you know, it's a lot of work to do. They've added a few more things on the town side too, to complete the capital plan. But we already had that, just like shaping it into something that we can present. But yeah, it's coming along really well. Courtney's sort of work on this has been great. And
I could share, oh, sorry.
it's okay.
I realized that I didn't share the timeline for you all. So the timeline for the designate or for the renewal is that we will have a draft of all of these elements of the application that I shared with you. We'll have a draft due the first Monday in July, and then the state board reviews our draft, provides comments, and we submit the final version on the first Monday of September. And then from there, I will go in front of the board. I believe it's September 25th. It's the 3rd Thursday or the 4th Thursday of September, where I will do a presentation about the last 5 years of Bristol's downtown, what success stories we have from capital projects to events to community engagement, and then hopefully receive approval. Sorry, I'll also present on our 5-year plan. So looking to the next 5 years, and then hopefully receive approval from their board on that day, September 25th.
Sounds great.
I make a motion to accept the downtown designation application renewal.
I second that.
A motion and a second, any more discussion? I just have a question more, Courtney, is when you said you were working on a lot of things and Ian knows, and Ian's done a lot of work with Bristol Core and the board, that one of our dilemmas is sewage capacity for our businesses.
Yes.
Is that something that maybe with Bristol Core's help could leverage some grants too?
Yes, absolutely. And we've, as I've shared, we're working closely with Valerie for the town side of the 5-year strategic plan. And so Valerie has drafted a good summary of all the capital projects that she sees us doing for the next 5 years that Bristol Core could be involved with. And that was one of them.
Okay,
Yeah.
it's good. More people can ask for the same grant. It sometimes rises up the ladder a little faster.
Well,
Yeah,
also,
absolutely.
just the fact that Bristol has a designated downtown and has some of these capital projects identified in their strategic plan that supports the downtown, that strengthens our grant applications through other programs.
Right.
Not necessarily downtown programs, but transportation programs. It elevates the town of Bristol in the priority ranking for other grant programs.
And it did that for the EV charging grant for the level 3. That was in there. If you're designated downtown, that bumps you up in terms of
Okay.
ratings, which is good.
Okay, okay.
Yep. And you can see those benefits right here as well, that prioritization for those grants.
Courtney, is there something that the select board needs to sign?
Yes, I will. I'm using basically the 2016 application as my guidepost for what this new application will look like. And so last renewal, select board signed this. Let me see if I can, oh, nope, not trying to zoom, just trying to scroll. Sorry. The select board, this is what we submitted for select board approval. It basically is just a note that the select board supports the town's application for renewal, and then we have your digital signatures here. So I'll circulate something like this to get the same sort of document included in this year's application.
I recommend that this year be on town letterhead.
Okay.
Yeah, so we'll collaborate to put something together for the select board
Yeah.
signature.
Okay.
Okay.
Well,
Thanks, Valerie.
Thank you, Courtney, for presenting that. We have a motion in a second. Any more hearing from Courtney you want to hear, or any more discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, under public hearing downtown application, renewal, any other updates? That was, we have the main.
Oh, the Pocock Rocks.
Pocock Rocks.
Yes.
We'll close that. And what is those dates, Courtney, for the public out there watching?
August 17th from 1 to 9.
August 17th, 1 to 9.
Yes.
And the event starts at 3 p.m. and will finish at 8 p.m.
Yeah.
How come we moved it to August? I mean, I know it was there last year because of the rain date.
Correct. We felt that it was a better time of year. We were always very close to July 4th.
Right.
And just people seemed to enjoy it at that time. There was nothing really going on, so we thought we'd just keep it there.
It was very well attended last year.
And we
Okay.
don't, for that particular thing, for the Pocock Rocks, I guess we need a motion.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
need a motion first.
And we don't need state approval. We'd always done it in the past where we contacted the state, and finally, I think last year, maybe it was the previous year that we did it, I actually got an email from the state saying, you don't need to keep emailing us about this. It's the town that decides this. And I said, great. So
Okay.
it was always a big
I'll entertain
question,
a
always a big
motion.
question mark. I make a motion to approve the Pocock Rocks Closing the Street application for August 17th.
I'll second.
There's a motion, a second. Any more discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Okay.
Thank you, Courtney.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Could I have the permission or the rule of the board to, Jeffrey's here for 5 minutes for a water commissioner service connection, and the public hearing for the water and sewer district is allocated an hour and a half. Could we switch those two around
Thank you very
so he doesn't have to sit through, because the agenda says that he's up before them.
That would be
Maybe he
fine,
wants to.
He's more than welcome to stay. It's kind of like watching.
planning commission meeting.
Yeah.
That's true,
that's
true.
Thank you.
So
Yes.
Jeffrey lives on Ezra Way. It's off from Pitch Avenue. And he's asking for a service connection. And I gotta read Valerie's notes.
Next lot, 2 lots.
One house on 2 lots? Is that what you just said?
I thought it said 1 house and 2 lots.
Actually, no, it's a one
There's-
house on 1 lot.
Yeah, I was gonna say, there's already a house
The
there.
boundary line has been adjusted.
Okay,
Or Chris has the application. I don't know if he's finalized it yet.
okay.
It's 1 house on 1 lot.
The taps are already done there, aren't they?
Yeah, everything's installed. All we need to do is connect up to it. When the parcel was subdivided by Nancy Dyke and got approval, it got a full water and sewer approval, and the lines were run
So the line runs right out to the house. We just have to run the line from the pipe to the house.
From the house to the curb stop.
That's, no, the
No,
curb stop- no,
it's,
the
they're,
curb stop is out at Fitch.
the right of way, the lines are all in,
Yeah, that's what I was trying to figure out. We know that we have the curb stop at the,
at the road.
right at the road at Fitch.
That line there from the curb stop,
Mhm.
that's already in.
Yeah.
That curb line all the way to there.
Oh, that's already it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
all the lines for all that, there's two more.
Even the
lines.
one up to lot 4, it's
Yeah.
already?
The lot
Yeah.
4 is occupied. There's
Oh,
houses.
is it?
Yeah.
I
Yeah, they
haven't
put
paid
them,
any attention.
they
to
put them
that.
all in before they put the road in, so
Well, I
they didn't
knew
have to
they-
dig
I-
the road back up.
I remembered it because we had looked at one of the lots back there. So I knew that they were supposed to do that, I just wasn't sure how it's done.
No, everything, water and
Everything's
sewer
in.
was all
Mhm.
installed.
And that's connecting with copper,
So you-
and you gotta notify our water operators and.
Right, the builder's been in touch with the water
Mhm.
department.
So is there a shut off right there then?
No, it's out at the road.
Right out the road, but
It
the pipe
just-
is there.
The pipe is there to that point. I make a motion, we allow them to hook up.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. I just have a couple of questions. So there's already one house out there?
There's 2 houses.
Two houses out there?
There's a house on.
Right.
Are they on the same line?
No,
No.
Okay, I'm just, I
no, they ran them
only
all.
see one line, that's all
I just drew in that.
Okay, you do that line, and I'm sorry.
I can show you if you want. I
No,
can show you
no,
the
I'm just,
plan,
I'm cool,
show you.
I'm cool with it. And Steve, you're okay with that? As he's on? or he hasn't
Your
been?
water operators are okay with it as well. Cyrus actually looked.
I'm gonna ask you next, Steve. He's our engineer, please.
They already approved
Yeah,
all
they
that.
did.
Okay,
When it was put
When
in, it was all
permitted-
approved.
Permitted.
All he's doing is asking to hook to it.
Mhm.
okay.
Mhm.
And Jill, so he's gotta notify you 48 hours in advance, right?
A minimum of, yes, so that we can
Mhm.
witness the connection.
Okay. Okay. All right.
Yep.
I
It
was
also
not gonna leave you out. I saw Steve pop up, so I asked him first, so.
I have
We still
another
need to
view of the,
You're gonna.
plan. That's the original subdivision, I think.
Yeah, I remember when we let him hook the first time.
What's the new one that's just gone up there? Where's that?
That's the one that the cursor's on right now.
Yeah.
That's the house that
Yeah.
we're building right now.
Oh, that is the house. I see.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
So there's a motion and a second. Any more discussion? All those in favor, the letting Jeffrey Lundstedt hook up to the line? Please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Staying? Okay.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Jeff.
We have another few minutes before the 7:30. Want to take up the next item? Public Works road trip?
We can.
What'd you say?
He's almost free.
He's almost free.
When did we do it last year?
What you said. July.
May, I think last year was
Last
May.
year
Oh, really?
was May and the year before that was July.
July. We just go
Let's
whenever
have
we
it
all
June
can
then.
make it.
Right, that's true. When can Eric make it? Since he's
He's on vacation here.
Wait a minute, hold on a
Weeks.
second.
Whatever
I don't
you
even
want.
know what's going on then. Oh, okay then.
You're on from the 17th off till July 1st.
So nothing in June.
That's good.
I
Okay.
ain't going nowhere with them, staying home.
That's all right, you're on vacation.
Working for
Not
starting.
scheduled. Okay, we're not-
Can you do that? Aren't you official?
I can make my own darn rules up there.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Watch out, you're on camera. And I'm like,
Yeah, Danny's probably watching.
July, you wanna do it on Monday night, non-meeting night, or you wanna do it?
I don't care, I can make work, whatever works for you guys, whatever.
Last year, we did it at like 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah. You wanna do that again? It sounds like you don't wanna do that.
Well, it just means I have to leave work early, so I just need
Is
that
that
enough
okay?
advance.
That sounds like a.
Not
positive.
really, but
Oh, okay.
Well, we can.
I
do it
usually make
later.
it work.
We need light.
We meet on the 8th and the 22nd.
Wait until 9
Yes,
o'clock,
Monday.
why are you?
I don't know. Also, is Queen Bee open? That was the big thing.
Yeah.
Yes,
We
no
just had to
creamies.
be there in
Wait,
time.
what? No creamies?
Not yet, no
No,
creamies.
Okay. But were they gonna have creamies? We need to schedule that in.
We need to make sure that, we need to ask her when she's gonna have her new creaming machine.
Exactly, so that's, it should be based around that.
Hey, can't go to the village creamery stand,
No, I know.
not this year anyway.
Okay,
We could take a ride out to Goodies.
Or Cookie Love.
That's
yeah.
true.
That's gonna get- that's gonna
We're
get-
really talking about a road trip.
Or Olson's
Cookie
on,
Love's closer than Goodies.
Yes,
or
I know.
Main Street in Middle, in Virgins.
Yeah.
Well, there's Full Belly Farm. they do them
There's
as well.
also one down in.
Oh, well, there you go.
Yeah, they're closer.
Full Belly
Or
Farm.
Village Creamery,
Creamery stand?
the Village
Oh, really?
Market in New Haven's got.
Oh, that's right, they
That's
do.
right.
They
Yeah,
do.
Jay Patty got creamies there, yeah.
Sorry, I have.
Yeah, you forgot off, stop right there. When are we gonna pick a date? Or do you,
Are we looking at the 15th then? Is that
or do you wanna,
The 15th of June?
July,
Oh, I was gonna say,
or the first? Wanna get it out of the way?
Yeah, either one of those. the first.
I won't be around on the first.
Okay, 15 it is, going once?
Hang on, let me get my calendar, the 15th, I don't have
Wait,
any,
are you
that's a
back for the
Monday?
15th?
Yeah.
July? Okay,
Yep.
all right, at 3 p.m.
I know it's a little early for Michelle and Pinker, but I can make it.
me too.
Can you get a bus for us?
I can, but I'm gonna have to drive because I know my driver is headed to Florida. And that's, I think, July 2nd or 3rd. That's why I was kind of hitting around for the first, but.
Well, I don't need to be there.
No, no, no.
I know
no,
the
no, no,
route.
I can drive it. It's all right. I
Okay.
forgot how to drive one.
All right, does that work for everybody? Is that
Yeah.
3 p.m. okay? You wanna do 4 p.m. or does it matter?
Don't matter.
Pinker, I'll do 4,
Oh, I don't care.
All right, 3 p.m.
3 p.m. July 15th. Is that
Yeah.
going once? Going twice? Sold.
Eric, it might be nice if some of your fellows can join in this time.
Oh, I would pretty much bet Colby will go, and if Bridgers doesn't have anything going on, I think he might jump on board.
Good, that'd be good.
Didn't
I know
someone come
Colby
last?
will go, I'm pretty sure that he would go.
Okay. Didn't someone come last? year?
Not last year, year before,
Okay.
or the year before that.
All right. Can Eric go? Is he free? Or does he
Yes.
need to be? Yeah.
Be back working.
Huh?
That day you'll be back working that day.
Yeah, I'll be back the first week of July,
Okay.
so I'm only out the last 2 weeks of June. That way there I can have some more time off, because I used all my time now.
There you
Have
go.
you?
Good.
Good.
Really?
It's coming.
Well, if you consider the 2 that I'm carrying over, yes.
Okay.
So you guys all set?
Yep.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank you.
Eric,
We won't
Just
go
on
too
the
much
side,
on
we
it.
didn't- or, well, no, I didn't even, no, never mind. Move along, go. It's not on here, department head.
Yeah,
This is a water, really.
Yeah,
well.
the-
Just a quick update then for you.
there is no department heads, Ron.
I was just gonna say the room's in,
Okay,
Great,
Oh, good.
so just waiting to get it scheduled, get installed.
Right.
okay,
So,
Thanks,
okay,
Eric.
thanks. See ya. Okay. Public hearing, Water and Sewer District Annual Meeting, review and approval of our operating budget, capital budgets. We will criminally discuss of alternate rate structures. Bristol's waterline replacement schedule review, Bristol West Waterline Replacement Project, 60% design plan review, preliminary discussion of waterline extension outside the public right of way, and other updates or issues. So we'll start with bullet point 1, review and approval of the operating budgets and capital budgets.
well, as I indicated earlier, things are still kind of in the works. There's been, it's a long list of things to be, have on our agenda, so.
Well, is there a particular one that you want to start with, that you prefer
I'll
to start
I'll
with?
pull up the water.
And not even turn the budget, but in terms of any of the others, are you okay doing budget first?
And are you interested in the water?
I think
Yes, she is.
I
Okay,
think she's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think Diane wants the number 5 bullet, preliminary discussion of water line extensions outside the public right of way. No, am I saying that?
Well,
I don't-
I don't know how you want to handle it. It was applied for before we talked about changing the rules.
Mhm.
So that's,
And it seems like it would be grandfathered in, right? In terms of some of the discussion.
well, we'll wait till Michelle
Michelle,
comes back.
okay.
But actually, I wouldn't mind starting with that,
Okay.
because it's
Because
kind of
ours is
a,
also-
it's kind of a big topic and Diane's here,
Yeah.
so. And, yeah,
Okay, So what document? That's our.
It's in the town admin report.
Oh, okay.
It's the summary in the town admin
okay.
report. On page 4. So Michelle, folks agreed that we'd hop to the water lines outside the public right of way discussion first.
So this is the water use ordinance revisions.
Correct. And
Okay.
so a quick update for context. Jill, Steve, Kevin Brown and I had the opportunity to meet last week, and we talked through a lot of different things. So there's still more to go. But one of the things that we seem to agree upon, following the issues that were raised with, well, the current J Drive proposal, but also other situations in town. But this one's the most time pressing. The question of extension of water lines outside the public right of way. And how does that get handled? Who's responsible for what, who pays for what, and that kind of thing. And then not only initially, but then 10 years from now, what's the deal? And there had been talks about, easements and financial responsibility and things like that. And what I and perhaps we are proposing is the notion that regardless of whether a distribution line, not the service lines, but the distribution line outside of a public right of way should just be part of the system, just part of the system, regardless that whether it's inside or outside of a public right of way is almost irrelevant, because it's what's in the best interest of the entire system.
Mm-hmm.
And so developments outside of a public right of way would need to go through the entire approval process, meet all the standards of any kind of municipal extension. It would be paid for by the developer, and it would include an easement, a utility easement that grants the town all of the appropriate rights and access and maintenance and all of that kind of stuff that we would expect of something that's in a public right of way. And then thinking through too, for those folks that are in this development off of a private road. So let's using J Drive as an example, but there are others. That is it fair for any of those residents 10 years from now to be responsible to cough up $10,000 to pay for a major repair on that section of water line when in fact it affects the entire system, and they're paying the same rates as everybody else. And and not all the developments going forward or past have homeowners associations. And so, and even if they do, what's their structure? What's their stability? And 10 years down the road, if there's a major problem for whatever reason, and there shouldn't be if it's built appropriately, the burdens of trying to track all that down and put all those people together and get the money and all those arrangements, but that's not in the best interest of the entire system. That it just, and we're not talking about a lot either, a lot of new lines this way. So that we just plan for it, build it into the asset plan and just over time budget accordingly. And these are new ratepayers contributing to the cash flow and the capital planning for it, the capital contributions. So that's the proposal, is to not get hung up about private roads versus public roads, but instead, and even as we have proposals before us, before the ordinance can be amended to reflect any kind of new policy this way, conceivably, applications could be approved with conditions that would mimic what we would be looking at to be in an ordinance, like the utility easement. So subject to execution of a utility easements acceptable to the town. And we would rely on our town attorney to tell us what that is. So that's the gist of it.
So given that, what we have now is, my understanding is sort of a bunch of random, and like you said, it's only a few cases, randomly installed water lines that the town maybe doesn't own perhaps doesn't have right of way because it's a private line. It's like a mixture of things. And what this is doing is consolidating sort of,
Not necessarily, because what we're thinking is, this is going forward.
okay,
There are too many oddballs
right,
to keep track of and deal with retroactively.
right.
We don't necessarily know what's in the ground in some of those cases.
I see,
And
okay.
and so this is,
So we can't look back and look at those.
Well,
We're not- we're not gonna
unless
do-
on case by case basis.
However, we can, on Adams, he just came in to get a preliminary approval. He hasn't gone through the permitting process.
Right.
We can go
Okay.
reevaluate his and say, look, we'll put in the main, you know, and then you're responsible, and we do the
Well, he'll
shutoffs for
put it in.
each.
He'll put it in.
Well, he'll put it
those
in, but I mean,
specs.
we'll be responsible for that main, and then he's responsible for
Yeah.
that, because we didn't issue a
No.
permit for him. It was
Yeah.
just, he was just coming in to look for a general.
And
So,
that's
but-
also a different type of animal, because what they're talking about are service lines, not distribution lines.
Right.
So
And you're
that's
talking about-
different.
You're talking about
Just
distribution.
distribution
Okay.
lines,
Okay.
that the town will not be responsible for service lines.
Well, no, I understand that, but
Yeah.
I'm saying that we would put in you know, because we were talking about putting in something at the end of the North
Right, we
Street,
talked
and
about
then
a lot of stuff.
putting in service lines all the way down, and I'm thinking that the way we're talking on this, we'd get an easement put in, like a distribution line, whatever you want,
Yeah,
the
2 inch,
main,
2 inch
2
distribution.
whatever, and then they attach it, so we can have a shut off for each house in the event that Adam no longer owns it anymore and he decides to sell them off individually. Because that was the biggest concern I had, was
Right,
like,
where the cutoff, the curb stops were.
right, and who's gonna pay if somebody doesn't,
Right.
if Adam decides, I don't wanna be the landlord anymore, and he sells them off individually.
His proposal is a slightly different animal than what we were talking about, because it has very unique variables.
I don't see why,
Mm-hmm.
it's still the same thing, it's still road. You still have houses off that road, I mean, it's no different to me than, J Drive. Cause it's still a road. It's still a private road, right?
It only goes to one residence, so, well,
Well, it'll go
a
to-
duplex.
And one
Aren't there
long
two
service
duplexes,
line.
aren't there? Two duplexes.
Well, J Drive goes to,
No, I'm talking
Totally.
about Adams.
oh, Adams. So,
And then he had two houses, he's gonna have two houses on the other end.
Yeah.
which is-
So given this, so you're talking about distribution, the larger line,
Right.
anything after that, let's say it goes to 14 separate houses. We would control the distribution line, look after that, even if it's on private land.
Right.
Anything that's connected to it is the responsibility of the,
From the
It'd
curb
be the
stop.
same as everything
Right,
else, to
right.
the curb stop.
To the curb
We would
stop.
be responsible to the curb stop
okay.
for maintenance
Right.
after it
Similar
was
similar to
installed.
what we have now
Yeah.
Right.
for any house.
Right, right,
So the easement area would be comparable to a public right of way.
Right.
For our purposes.
right.
And anything outside of that,
we have the permission
No, sorry.
Yeah.
It's okay.
to dig on it, dig in it if it
Right.
compromises
That
our
easement,
system.
that easement would be granted to us to do all things that we would need to
Repairs.
do, install, repair, replace, maintain
right?
So the biggest difference really is that it's
on a private.
That's right. You know, if I'm on Mountain Terrace, the town owns the road as the distribution line goes right by my
Mhm.
house.
Mhm.
But it's my responsibility to connect to that with my
Mhm.
curb stop, and I'm paying for that and looking after that, correct?
Mhm.
And for this, it's just exactly the same thing, no matter where it is. But it just happens to be that larger distribution line is on a private road, and we just have the ability to get to that if we need to.
Mhm.
Okay,
Well, that's what I said earlier, you know, I think it behooves the town to have the ability
yes.
to meter those houses individually
Right.
as
Oh, yeah.
opposed to one master.
Right,
meter.
because it locks, if it's a homeowners association or if it's 14, for this example, individual owners, it locks them into a real problem if something happens to that distribution line and it affects 14 homes, that how are they gonna figure out how to pay for that or do what they need to do, so,
And,
yeah. I
and,
think
and in
it's-
those situations where there's some sort of failure, that jeopardizes the entire system.
Right,
Contamination, whatever.
right, okay,
I mean, let's take, as we learn now, Francis Drive is not, it's a 6-inch main going to a fire hydrant, not owned by the water department.
Pre-existing situation.
What they, and the development, we have the minutes, I had the minutes in the letter. And I talked with a developer from 1984, or whatever that one's put in, or 86. And he said the town wouldn't give me any money for it, so I think in rightful respect, the village fathers made some huge errors that night, was sort of said, you put it to our specs, and when it's turned on, it becomes property of the water department. And they didn't.
Water under the bridge
It's
now.
water under the bridge, but, and I think that's, this compromise won't have that, and say, that's that 2-inch main, it sprinkles like crazy, but it doesn't go through my meter, so I don't care, and well, it compromises our system, so we own it. You put it into our specs, and now we own it, and now we're gonna go repair it.
Just J drive and whatever you have else. Is there a certain requirement before you have to have a fire hydrant out there? So when you do something like that, you.
Is it 500 feet, Jill?
Is what, 500 feet?
500 feet between hydrants?
I think that's the state regulation.
Yeah, so there's
So
a
would that be
hydrant right
required?
across from J Drive and it's
Mhm.
only, yeah, it's 800 feet up to Dottie's, but don't even have water.
Well, he doesn't have village water.
No.
So given the J Drive example, does this pose any problems with that particular development in terms of the recommendations here? Does
I
it change?
don't believe so.
Okay.
I think it actually simplifies
Right.
things.
Okay.
Well, that's
It makes it a whole
my goal.
lot easier for each landowner out there.
And everybody.
Right.
One of the things that the Select Board / Water Commission discussed at that April 8th review, there was a lot of discussion about a meter pit, and that's where you're talking about the master meter. I mean, each of the units would still have their own meter.
Right.
But there was a discussion of the need for a master meter to control if it was gonna be a private line.
Right.
But if it's not going to be a private line,
You don't
then a
need
master then the meter pit would not
Isn't
be
needed.
necessary, which is another benefit. It's just one less thing to,
It's one
Go
less
wrong.
thing to work, yeah. And it's pricey.
yeah.
One less thing to break.
I know
I think all of that sounds good. I mean,
Yeah.
all of that benefits the town, and it looks like the hydrants too. You know, you say regardless of where they're located on private roads, should be under sole jurisdiction of the water system.
For exactly the same reasons.
Okay,
What's-
sounds great. Next.
Well,
Well,
Andy, you
so-
wanna say anything, comment, or?
No, I'm just frustrated with how long it's taken.
You expressed to me the other day when I was at
Yeah,
training.
I've expressed
I
it
agree
a
with
lot.
you. Yeah.
So, given this decision, of what sounds like a consensus then that may pave the way for the J Drive application to move forward, perhaps as early as the next meeting. Because what was reviewed on April 8th was not a complete application. So we still don't have an actual complete application to even potentially act on tonight. So,
Yeah, but if you don't have the easement language and all that.
Yeah,
stuff,
exactly.
You really can't. I mean, and this isn't really in our ordinance yet,
Right.
so can we follow this
it would be a
You can make
subject
it a
to.
condition.
condition? Yeah.
And Kevin is working on developing a template easement, but I don't know.
Yeah,
how
I'll
far
make sure I'll get out there.
I'm sure there are others that don't need to reinvent the wheel.
Okay.
Okay.
So we
Um,
could be looking at the next meeting to
June
move this
24th.
application forward.
I have a question.
Sure.
You think we'll have the answer?
There's 6 of us here. One of us might have the answer.
We installed, or we partially have installed a 6-inch,
4 inch.
4-inch pipe
Mhm.
or service. And then these people will do curb stops onto it.
Mhm.
You're proposing that you will take over the 4-inch line.
So the 4-inch goes from the 8-inch under the Pike Road.
It doesn't yet, but it will.
Okay. I'm
Yeah,
just-
it isn't connected yet because
So it's not in yet?
So, yeah, what we're proposing is that once it's into the town specifications, that the town would own everything and maintain everything, including to the curb stop. And then from the curb stop to the house would be the homeowner's
so
responsibility.
I'm giving the town the water, a couple customers,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Mhm.
And
Customers.
paying for the material, putting it in the ground to our specs, and
Excuse
then
me?
paying for the material to put it in the ground and everything, the digging, the cost, all that's
That's all.
on
the
board on you
developer.
guys, and then
Mhm.
it's turned over to the town.
That's our responsibility.
Yeah, and then once you put it in the ground to our specs, approved by our water operators, witness it, and then they give the blessing, then any leaks from that point on, or we dig it back up
My
inside.
next question is, when actually are the people going to be able to turn their faucets on.
If we approve
When
it.
can we turn you on? You don't have a tap.
I'm just gonna say, yeah, once we give permission on the 24th with a complete application, check me if I'm wrong, group.
So far, so
We,
good.
we stamp it and say, yeah, you can dig, and then you put it in, get a hold of B-Tubs, they come in, schedule it. Okay, we're putting it in the ground, they witnessed it, yep, everything looks great, blah, 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 backfilled it, done properly. And then, once you hook up the homes,
Well,
they
it have to
can.
be,
They
there's,
had to be
there's a bunch of
connected
other
to the
stuff.
tap, yeah.
Well, it has to be
a
tapped,
wet tap.
then it has to be
Pressure
pressure
tested.
tested, then it has to be
Chlorinated.
sanitized.
Cool.
Pressure tested, sanitized, water samples. That can't be live to any homes until it passes the pressure test, the chlorination, the clearing of the chlorination and clean water tests. And then at that point, if it passes all of those, that's when that can be live. But as far as like putting the tap into the 8-inch main, the preliminary letter that was written for the approval already has lots of details on just making sure that whoever is doing that tap has got appropriate licensure to be doing that, it's scheduled ahead of time, that we can witness that, make sure that it's tight, that it's not leaking, that there's a valve there, all the fun stuff.
I'm guessing it'll probably be, Mike, McDougal.
Yep, he's very good at it.
Yep.
Great.
So, do I have a date certain for you? Probably not, but
I would say if,
2 weeks
if
from
we,
now, tonight,
if we approve it next meeting. And once it'll probably be a week after the tap's done. In order to get all the
that done.
testing and everything done.
Jill, he's asking that question.
Uh,
Is that a week?
I know I did one in Middlebury, and
Well,
it was 3 or 4 days between the testing and the clearing the chlorination and getting the test back.
So basically you don't do coliform samples on a Friday, right? So you have to think about your planning and your flushing. You've got to have a way to flush it. You've got to have a way to chlorinate it. And yeah, it's several days because your pressure test is several hours. And then you're chlorinating for 24 hours, then you're flushing. Once there's no residual, then you take, or a low residual, under like 2 parts per million is when you take your coliform tests. Those go to the lab. That's a 24-hour special coliform sample. Those are paid for by the developer. And then that they're reported on the water system, just so you know. It's all interrelated, but those come back the following day, generally speaking. So if those get there at like noon or 2 o'clock on like a Tuesday or a Wednesday, we know by the end of the day, the very following day, if they passed. So if those passed and everything's everything's not leaking and it's ready to go, that's when the water can be live to this houses. Oh, and also, Steve asked me to mention, it does require in the permit that Steve certifies the design as well, that it's constructed per the design that's on the drawings. As required by the state, their water and wastewater permit.
Steve, where were you? How many years ago when we had some screw ups around here?
There's lots of details with water because it's if it's not done right, people can get sick, and that's really what it comes down to for us, is just making sure that it's not leaking and that it's a tight system so that nobody's getting bacteria in their water and getting sick. So.
Alrighty, so
Does that answer?
I hope that
your question?
probably doesn't answer your question.
Oh, I'm really confused, but okay. So I'm asking about the application. Is there an application that I have to complete?
I emailed it to you this afternoon and I copied Kevin and Steve and Jill.
This Steve and this
This-
Jill.
And the other Steve. There's
Steve Palmer.
No,
no,
my
well,
brother.
yeah.
Brother
And
Steve
Steve,
Heffernan.
yeah, I knew which 2 Steves you were tired. I was just,
Yeah.
I knew it was this Steve and Jill.
Yeah. So,
And I'll
so your team has the information.
Yeah, and I'll just say out loud that pressure testing and that back T testing and everything, it's the entire water main, we'll call it a distribution line, all the way to the curbs. That's the area that needs to be pressure tested and back T tested as well, and flushed with chlorine so that we know there's no bacteria in there.
Yeah, I know, McDougal will do all that as well. The pressure test and the chlorinating and all that. He's always done it for us in the past.
Perfect. Easy peasy then. He's a pro at that stuff, so that's great.
Yeah.
Okay,
Get over.
okay,
Okay.
so I'd love to tell you
You're
more.
moving forward.
You're moving forward.
You know how long I've been working on this?
Yeah,
Oh, okay, thank you.
you're
No,
welcome, Dan.
thanks.
Okay.
Would you like to discuss next?
We'll move back to the budgets.
Well, just, yeah, quickly on the budgets, because the water, well, the sewer might be more complete than the water. The water still has some variables that we're working through. So I guess maybe going to the sewer would be,
Let's do the sewer then.
all right,
Get the new.
Like
easy-
you're talking about a
low
status
hanging fruit
report or
off
the
the-
actual budget?
budget. Let me share screen here. So. all these
You know, it's the line. I bought new glasses and the
They don't have the
lens
right
size
spot.
is different.
Oh, interesting.
So the line is in the wrong place.
No. Ah,
Your line isn't up, right, because they shut down.
They
Right.
need to adjust them. They need to adjust your glasses. The frame itself is probably not right.
Well, it's not the frame, it's my other glasses, the glass is narrower,
Narrower like this.
So the-
instead of-
so the
Yeah.
bifocal's further up.
Usually you have 30 days. Take 'em
I was
back.
gonna say, they should have
There you go.
measured that when
I
they
know.
did it.
Peak.
Peak.
Presents.
Okay,
Okay.
so sewer budget, we looked at this last time, and the only thing that really needed to be updated were the administrative expenses. And so those numbers are there, and the distribution is, how that's derived is laid out in my town admin report, where 2% of my compensation, 2% of the treasurer's compensation, and 1% of the clerk's compensation is allocated to the sewer district operations. So that's where those numbers come
I
from.
have a question on the upper lines, the interest and whatever. Do we ever get interest and penalties? Because I've never seen us
Apparently not.
have anything. I was like, so why do we have that line in there? I mean, do we ever charge interest on late payments?
I believe so.
But you can't tell me everybody pays on time.
No, there
but we
are a
should
lot of
see,
late payments.
right,
Then there should be interest
Yeah.
/penalties, whatever. I don't know how it
You owe
works.
$95, you gotta send a check for $97.50, because $2.50
Right,
interest
whatever it is.
should show it.
Sure, yeah.
I've heard more conversation among customers and things like that for the water system, but
Mhm.
not so much the sewer system. Because there are fewer customers on the
Mm-hmm.
sewer system, and
But the water system's the same way. I was looking at it, and I was
Oh.
like, why do we have this line in here?
Yeah.
It's like,
I-
okay.
I'm 82% sure that interest and penalties do get assessed, but they might not be coded
Mhm.
properly,
right, because we're budgeting a certain amount for each of those in terms of revenue,
right?
but then it's always zero.
Right.
It's
Right, it's not a
probably,
lot, but,
it's probably in the user fee line.
yeah,
Yeah.
It probably all goes
Yeah.
in there.
but then why do we have the line?
Right. I mean, we should know what that number is.
Right, you would
If,
think
if
we
we're, if
If we're
we're,
charging it, we should know.
what it is.
Yeah.
Regarding the admin and all of that, is there ever a way to remove all that from the equation, so we don't have to have such a complicated way of dividing up your time and other people's time?
I would love it.
Okay. I mean, I know why it's there, I know why it's done that way, but
I do too. and to me,
idea-
It's just,
It
We should
was back
convoluted.
when it was set up, they wanted to
Right.
make sure that
it's divided.
the
fairly.
trustees wanted to make sure that everybody was paying for
Right,
what they were getting.
and yeah, not everybody else who wasn't on the water
Yeah.
system, whatever.
One thing that would simplify it for the sewer and the water is, rather than break it out by health insurance, retirement.
Yeah, can't you
Social
just have a
Security,
set
like,
fee?
well, because they're summarized in other spreadsheets. We can go to just the final number.
right.
Can't we just say,
Yeah, that would be.
you know,
And just take
Admin
10% of
fee.
that, or 2% of that.
whatever
rather
it
than
is,
break
admin fee?
Right.
Or administration fee, whatever you wanna call it, and just figure out what the number is and.
Yeah, so it would be more efficient to simplify it to just one line
Yes.
of administration. fees.
Would you use the same calculation or would you change?
Well,
I mean, I wanna-
that's an open question.
Right. I mean, we're trying to simplify,
Right,
so then, regardless of the line. item,
If we
you know,
flat
we're-
rated it, it comes
Yes.
out of the.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Seems like, I mean, that's not a discussion. We can maybe look at that for the next season.
because
But
you can see from the formula up here that I had to go and do the
Right, I know.
calculation to several
Yeah.
different lines in the.
For
it's like-
me, I would just say a flat rate.
Oh, yeah.
You know, whatever it is, and.
yeah,
And then if,
We can look at
as
it.
salaries go up, we just bump.
right,
Just
exactly.
right.
Add a percentage on each year if needed.
Yeah, whatever it is,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, all right.
Although the variable is that health insurance does.
Jump.
Yeah, is quite.
But
not-
we have,
unpredictable.
we're paying it anyway, and
Right.
and everybody is a
Yeah.
rate payer.
Right. Yeah, do you run the risk of a,
Well, not,
Not everybody,
not
no.
everybody. I mean, I know why they're trying to do this, because they're trying to get the percentage
Yeah.
for the people who are on the water district
Right.
versus those who are not, so.
But it's not enough, it's
I know
it's peanuts in the
Yeah.
grand
well,
scheme.
so
of
let's
things.
add that to our,
So if we
terms of
make it a
ours.
flat rate
Yeah.
with a,
So
A
what's,
percentage increase or whatever
Yeah.
every year, yeah.
that covers it.
Yeah.
So this looks pretty good. I mean, so we've got a 2.1 in terms of our revenues. And obviously for the expenses, any other,
what's the total budget up? It's 2.1.
2.1.
yeah,
I guess I just want to note that 49,445 per Sharon this morning does reflect all 12 billing periods, so you're actually short 2.23%. So you might, yeah, just want to.
what's the reason for that?
Yeah, why,
Because you're assuming that the user rates are assuming that people are using the same amount that they used in the past, and flows aren't necessarily higher. So this is again, your sewer rates are based on flow. They're not based on an equivalent unit. So when people use less sewer, they use less water, they have less water flow going to sewer, they get a smaller bill. And that doesn't change the cost of the sewer system. So you kind of have like an error again to your billing structure because you're not actually billing your budget. Because people at times are underusing the flow that you had planned for.
so,
How do you account for that?
So can we change that calculation then? So we can actually,
Is that Cy laughing in the background?
Yes.
he's coughing
Gagging.
terribly.
I know, he's like, oh God, another one. But you can do as you wish. It's just like, because your two rate structures for water and sewer are dependent on use and they're not fixed. There's no fixed portion per se of your billing structure. You don't get all of your income necessarily if people conserve, which we want people to conserve, but we can't afford to keep not billing out all of the proposed fees. So it just basically to get to 51,780, you would actually need to do 2.7 or 4.7, I think.
so that 2.3% is really costing us. What am I trying to say here? The budget, if we'd taken in $50,500, which we budgeted.
Yep.
We wouldn't have a 2.1%, we might have a 3.5% budget rate increase.
I
Is that
think
what you're
that's
saying,
about-
Jim?
I
No,
think
it'd be
that's
the other
about
way
right.
around.
Or the other way around?
We have less of an issue.
Yeah,
Well, so
you're
maybe
right.
that's-
I'm seeing what you're saying, because the 2.4% is an increase on the budget of 5572, but the income was 49,445, and that's not budgeting for actual, it's budgeting for budget.
Okay.
You'd have to
So
divide
maybe-
it by actual in order to get that percentage correct.
The actual percentage of.
So maybe we need to look at flat rate going forward. This would be for the next budget cycle, is to look at that and see what the potential for
What do you
that
mean by
is.
flat rate?
you can't because it's based on
Water flows.
water flows.
But we have the choice though to change how we bill.
But then we also are looking at changing for BOD, we're looking at, you know, so I think we're close enough so that we're not in trouble.
Right.
And I don't know what was our actual expenses? Are we over? or are we, we still got $1,000. We're golden.
Okay.
1,000 that we didn't spend.
That we haven't spent yet. But we
I
got
don't-
We're not
we
at the
got
end of
another
June
3
yet.
weeks left.
Yeah,
No, but I mean, it's so tight every year, and the idea is that we're trying to maintain the system, and it's like, we're scraping by the skin of our teeth.
Well, we're gonna have to increase it in order to make up, we're gonna have to increase something in order to make up for that fluctuation somewhere.
Yes.
Well, we have the bond going off that we put the money into,
Yeah, we could
that
lower
we,
that.
that we put the money into there, so we're,
Don't screw with that.
Yeah.
no, I'm not saying, but what I'm saying is the money is there, it's not.
I understand that, but
Well, how does Virginia's don't they have a flat rate? I think, or maybe that was just for water, but I thought Sharon had said that
They
Virginia.
have a flat rate up to,
Oh,
if you
right,
go
it's
to
not-
Florida and you don't use any
Yes,
water,
it's not the
you
ERU.
pay a flat rate because you
Yes.
pay for the entire
That's
system.
right, but it's
Right.
usage.
And
Okay.
I'm gonna ask that question, what we wanna do with the water with, if nobody used any, and if a business closed down here, let's say, God forbid, I hope that none of them close. But if some of the users just said, you know what, I didn't use any water the year, so they get no sewer bill.
Correct.
So should we go like we wanna do with the water? You gotta at least pay
Yeah,
something
Yeah.
to be hooked up, so to
Yes.
speak.
Yes, absolutely. And that is a segue to the same conversation we are going to have with the water system and trying to develop this new rate structure based upon either equivalent unit or equivalent residential unit.
Right.
We're almost there, but
Okay.
I expect that the
That's
same
okay.
concept can be applied to the sewer, and the same type of analysis can be applied once we're through the water system. But the water system is just much more complex because there's the variety of different,
Well, a lot more users than 40.
more and different variety than we would have on the sewer system.
So Jill, you manage other sewer systems.
Yep.
How are those?
Not the billing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
you,
but I
I
know
don't
how they're billed. Yeah, so both of them are billed based on the number of bedrooms. So they're not metered systems. The other two wastewater systems, they don't have water. Well, one of them has water, but they don't meter it. So it's just based on what their connection is and what the costs of the system are, and then everything just gets divided and applied as such.
Yeah. Yeah, so
Sounds easier
we're
to
not,
forecast that way.
it is
It's
definitely.
easier to, but it's not fair.
It's not fair,
Yeah.
right?
It would, well, it's fair if it's all residential,
Mhm.
Right.
where we have residential and commercial mix,
Yes.
you can't. And we have some outfits that are a lot bigger than others, so.
Yeah, your source more complicated because of you have really high fats, oils, and greases. Your BOD and TSS are really high, and so yep, because of the
that's where
types
we
of
have to
businesses. So
And we're working towards it.
Sorry, Joe, good job.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I think, I don't expect, I'd be surprised if the select board wants to approve the budget tonight without adjusting or talking more about the revenue gap. I think by the next meeting, I'm expecting by the next meeting, we might have a proposal for the wastewater. That might be simple.
Which,
It's just that
as
we
you
didn't-
said, we can apply. to the
Yeah,
sewer.
it's just
Okay.
that the water one is just taking a lot more effort. But as I'm thinking about it, I think it could be done more quickly for the sewer system.
Okay.
By the next meeting. And as it relates to both, and talking about the structure, as I mentioned at the last meeting, there are a lot of different ways you can calibrate it. Jill mentioned bedrooms. Some places go by bedrooms, 3 bedrooms per single family house, that's one ERU. Some go by wastewater flow, others go by number of dwelling units. And so our recommendation is to go by dwelling units because that's consistent with what the state does.
Yeah.
And that way we'll be consistent with what the state does. But for dwelling units, it's pretty straightforward to calculate. And we're starting to do that. We're in the process right now of trying to calculate exactly how many dwellings or equivalent dwellings there actually are in the water system. And then see what that amounts to per unit. monetarily, we know what our fixed costs are, so if we
Right.
divide those, EUs or ERUs by what we know our fixed costs, then we can kind of come up with a baseline.
Right.
We're not quite there yet.
But does it guard against a moral hazard of like, you just turn the water on, like, so there is some usage, right? Like
Oh,
there's
yeah,
a
there-
flat
there would be
fee, but
two
then if you
tiers.
go over, okay.
Yeah. For example, the flat fee would apply for those properties that have the water turned off for the season,
Mhm,
and they go to Florida.
mhm.
For those 4 months that they're not using water, they should still pay that base fee for
Okay.
the privilege of continuing to be connected to the water
And-
system.
I was trying to understand the ERU.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Joel brought up last meeting, if you have a service, like you have a service put into your property and a curb stop, even though you're not using it, you have access to the water, you should pay that.
Mhm.
Even though there's not a house connected to it.
You should pay that debt service.
Yeah,
Right.
like I brought up an example, we own a piece of property, the bank does, the old car wash property in Brandon, it's been down 15 years now on the ground. We have a curb stop there and we get a bill every quarter
Mhm.
for $75, $80 every
Mhm.
quarter, we pay it. Cause you can hook on, it's not our fault, you're not hooking up to it. It's
Right,
there.
right.
You're paying for all the usage, not the usage,
The
you're paying
the
for
capital.
Debt
the
service.
capital.
Capital improvement.
And I think that's.
So
what's
the
gonna
ERUs,
happen.
when you have an apartment, say there's 5 apartments in one
That-
building,
that'd
is
be-
that
That'd
5?
be 5.
That is
ERU.
5. Okay, that's what I was, when I was reading it, I was trying to
Right, yeah.
figure, I was trying to understand if that was truly the case, or if it was that whole building was just one.
Right.
Right now, it's just one.
That's where,
Right,
yeah, I gotta
right.
change that.
I would think, so if we decide to go with the state model, which I think, I talked about that last week, is there a way for us, as we move towards that, to confirm that we're doing the right thing?
Right. Well, that's why I want to run scenarios.
Okay,
I want to, once we have all the information, because there are some properties, we know there's multi-residents in it, but I don't know how many units there are, or it's an office and some number of units, don't know how many exactly. And then there's, how do you translate that? I think there's a formula, but I haven't understood it yet. How to calculate what that value is for non-residential.
Well, I was
like-
just gonna say, like the massage offices, the
Yeah.
restaurants.
Or the school, or the
schools,
shopping
right,
center,
right.
or, you know, the Walgreens, you know,
Yeah.
those,
Steve-
what are they? I
He
don't
was
know.
suggesting for us to use the formula that's in the intended use plan.
Right.
Right,
That way,
I haven't.
Our
Figured it
ERUs
out.
are equivalent to their ERUs, and therefore we just everything is just super straightforward. And we're not having a bunch of different types of measurements for the same reality of this is water.
Right.
so given that, if we go that direction, in theory, when we move to our next phase of our project, and they run the calculations again to see if we get 50% loan forgiveness, we should have identical ERU measurements, correct, or numbers?
I-
Because that was the big thing for the past one,
Yeah.
but I
They
just
had
want,
more.
I just, right. And so I guess if we know what they calculated it as before, and I guess we can compare that and make sure that it's the same thing.
Right.
I hate to put all this work into this and then have them run that. and
Change the
say,
rules again? They change the
Well,
rules?
right, that's one possibility, but to have them come back and say, oh, that our numbers don't match, even though we followed. the same
You've got
formula.
700 and we only have 695.
Well,
Right, yeah,
let me see if I can
Well,
find.
I mean, to me, the trailer park is over here, is a perfect example. They call that one EU,
We do,
correct, not they.
we do. They call it,
and I think it's 45,
they call it
Correct.
45, we call it 1.
but Reggie
Because we
Blaze
only
is
have
up
one
his
meter.
9 units, we call it 9, and there's 9 curb stops.
No, there's only one. He has a master meter.
Yeah, all three, he does that by the road now.
Yeah.
I think,
And
That's when-
and if we had set this up originally in a fashion that calculated the ERU correctly, these areas would be correctly noted as multiple versus one.
because it used to be at KTP was
Everybody had their own.
everybody got a meter. And then let's say, okay, we said to the trust, you're 2,000 gallons, you use 2,000 gallons more than we added all up. So they only paid the $2,000 difference. Used to be, years ago, they used to pay the difference. They'd read the master meter and then read all the meters inside and calculate, okay, because of all the leaks, you had 2,000 gallons of leaks or 5,000 gallons of leaks.
They've, ever since that meter has been put in, ever since the master meter has been put in, whoever owned the trailer park has paid the whole bill and billed their residents. we have not read a meter in that park since the master meter was
I thought
put
they
in.
did, Peter, but maybe I'm wrong, but I thought they did.
But yeah, as long as we have the state formula,
Yeah,
Yeah.
we can start our calculations.
Well, let me indulge me for a moment.
is this the Schedule C? The
No,
infamous Schedule C?
I don't know what that is, but,
That's the one where they're like, if you just would have used this, you would have understood our calculation.
okay. So this is where I've gotten so far. So this lists, I think I've scrolled through this quickly the last time, that there's 700 accounts listed here. And some of the descriptions tell us like number of bedrooms, we were looking at that, and number of dwelling units. So I went through and I did one or I tried to list all the ones that I knew that were obvious, like 7 units, 3 apartments. So I went through and I listed as many as I could find. And there are a lot of gaps. Most of the commercial ones are gaps, and some properties I just didn't know. But of those, it totals 733,
Right.
just those. But the state says we have 695.
Mhm.
So I don't know, and this is without all the other stuff.
So
So,
what, I'm gonna ask a stupid question, but I have my house. That's a ERU, and I have an Airbnb. Is that another one?
that's a good
Yeah.
question.
I think it's supposed.
You have an
to-
Airbnb within your house?
Yeah.
Oh, within your house.
Yeah.
not
Could it be
separate.
rented as a separate unit?
Well,
Dwelling
it
unit.
would all depend on how we calculated the area, and that's the big question.
Or define it,
Right.
yeah. What's a dwelling unit?
Yeah,
And-
Because I don't live there.
right.
You can come and
But
stay
you could
there.
rent it out
Right.
as an apartment though.
That's what I'm saying, yeah.
You got
Well, I don't know, well, there
one or
again,
two curb stops.
and some,
This is public hearing, don't give away too much information.
No, no. some Airbnbs have all the amenities.
Right.
And some are just a bedroom.
Right.
Right,
Well,
True.
right.
So,
Yeah, that adds even more
That's
complication.
more like
Yeah.
that's more like a B and B.
so just to quickly go back to this, using I touched on this last time too, that we know what the debt service is. And so taking that fixed cost plus the other operating fixed costs total, and using the state 695. So dividing our budget by 695 came out to $564 per ERU. But if I applied that formula to Bristol with just these numbers, it adds up to that. When we know that the water budget is not even close to that, it's, well, almost close to that, but it's less than that.
Good.
So the ERU value is going to be far less than that per ERU. It might turn out to be something like, as Jill suggested, like maybe $90 or whatever. But, so that's
I
the
don't know, I
kind
kinda
of,
like that number. I'd hate to have to pay it, but I kinda like that number.
and that's just the baseline. That's not that's not the usage charge
Oh,
or anything
oh,
else.
Okay.
So obviously this needs to be adjusted, but I want to base it on some actual scenarios and realistic scenarios, rather than just pulling out of the air, something
I
that's
think to figure
defensible.
out, it says ERUs based on bedrooms, 1.33.
That's my
Well,
house.
that's because, if there's 4 bedrooms
Right.
and if 3 bedrooms is considered 1 ERU, then that's
Oh,
where that
I
comes
see what
from.
you're saying.
Of course, the
So-
fourth bedroom.
So they're
yeah.
basing one ERU on 3
Yeah.
bedrooms. and-
Yeah.
And one with only 2
Closet.
bedrooms.
Yeah, I got it.
That's an
Yeah.
office, mine's an office, so it's got the washer.
It's like a hallway.
So even
that goes to
then,
the other
going
bedroom.
that route, the bedrooms, it's over 760 units, which is again far higher than the state's 695. So there are a lot of,
Can you get a spreadsheet from them of what?
I thought we did.
well, we did get information.
Yeah.
It
They-
requires
Clear as
somebody else to decipher it for me.
Well, but
They sent us.
I mean,
But then
it shouldn't be that hard.
Okay,
I mean,
I think
there should be a way for us to look at what they've done and
And
say,
reverse engineer. it,
okay,
right?
this is
Work it
wrong
backwards,
because
right?
of this. You're missing,
We
Yeah.
don't want more ERUs, so
well,
for,
I mean, it needs to be accurate because we
Yeah.
need, we can't keep going back and forth with them and fighting the
Right.
So-
fight.
The difference right there is that's a quarter, the 90, and the 564, I believe, is annualized. So it would actually be 360 is current.
No, I see what you mean.
Okay, just
Well,
thought
so-
I'd clarify. It's not that
Yeah.
disparaged. It's like 57% different.
Yeah.
So you're saying an ERU, like, I closed my house up, went to Florida for a whole year, I'd pay $90 a quarter
Right,
just to capital.
Something like that, in theory.
Is that
Yeah.
the whole budget or just the usage? I mean,
Well,
There's just a flat
Just-
rate.
just a flat rate, yeah, without
Then there'll be
usage.
usage on top
just
of
for
that.
just for the luxury of
right,
having.
no, I'm just,
Yeah. And in some places, and I'll use Waitsfield as an example again, in Waitsfield, one ERU includes 10,000 gallons of water. So anything over 10,000, it gets charged at $6 per 1,000 gallons.
I like that, because then it creates an incentive to conserve.
Yeah,
Right.
but again, it also provides a fixed
You
revenue.
know what your
But
revenues
then
are.
we have it already, don't we do a limit on that? Or we don't?
We have a flat rate to a certain,
Right,
Some gallons.
there's a minimum charge and you're
Yes.
allowed so many gallons.
Right.
I
So
don't
it's- so
remember
it's
what
similar.
it is.
It's
Yeah.
100 gallons a day. So it's basically, if every billing period was exactly 90 days, it's $9,000 or 9,000, excuse me,
Gallons.
gallons per
Right.
quarter, except some of them are 86 days, some of them are 91 days because the read can't be done in one day.
Well, I think, so with the state side of things, if we have the formula or if we have the spreadsheet, I do think we need to reverse engineer that, because if we're going forward and we have 3 other phases where we're working with the state and they're using their own calculations, we need to be as close as possible to those calculations, or we run the risk of, again, questioning it and trying to fight it as we did this time for phase 1, and we're gonna run into the same problem. You know, we could say, well, our calculations, we did a new formula and we've got 733, and the state can come
But
back
if we
and say,
if we use their definition and we can prove to them that their number is off,
right.
Yeah,
then that's-
we're
But
gonna
we
prove
should-
they're off by, we
they're
got a
the
lot
wrong
more.
way, the
Yeah.
wrong way for our benefit
Right.
anyway. But it won't be,
It won't be
if-
catastrophic.
once we've spent enough money, it won't be.
Yeah.
But I'd rather use what they're doing. If we can
Right.
figure out how to do it and then apply it to our system,
That's the easiest,
in
yeah.
theory, it should match
That's,
or be
that
pretty
would be the
darn
most
close.
consistent.
And we need to
Until
figure
they
out what it
change
is, because when we have new units come in, we need to figure out how to categorize them and what
Mhm.
percentage we need to use.
okay,
So any more discussion on the?
you said you're gonna bring us a final,
Yeah.
you don't
give that
feel
some thought.
comfortable approving the sewer budget tonight?
Well, if you like to, but I don't have a recommendation about how to address the 2% increase.
But we will next time, potentially, if we figure out the water side. of
Yeah.
things, we'd have our standard rate or our flat rate.
And hopefully it might even be simpler and help lead us through the rest of the water scenarios.
Okay.
Just some success there, hopefully.
Okay,
Okay.
All right.
so you wanna do the water now?
Sure. Close out some of that here.
I'm gonna ask a question while you're, because I was looking at the budget status report. I see we haven't gotten our Sugarwoods revenue yet,
I noticed that.
unless it went into some other line item, like the miscellaneous revenue.
Possible.
Did we find out where our
Undesignated.
surpluses is?
I studied both audits, the most recent audits, and I did all kinds of word searches. There's nothing in there about undesignated funds for the water system. So the auditors are gonna be here later this month, and also after Justin comes back. I want to ask him to look at the bank statements and see what they reveal, what kind of balances they show, and see if he can help also unravel this question.
Yeah, cause it's really gonna suck if that $1 million we got all belongs to the water, well, it's not gonna suck for the water.
Water department, yeah.
It's gonna
Yeah.
suck for the rest of it.
Because it clearly has to be somewhere. So
Yeah,
What
in the
is
general fund.
I really don't think it's in the
It's,
general.
We,
our
per
water.
tap, Don Gale pays us per
Per
tap
tap.
for the waterworks up in Lincoln that we.
We
Oh.
own land way up, 100 and some odd acres.
Oh, okay.
The old water reservoir, well, not reservoir.
Basically, he
Intake
uses it
where the
from us.
water used to come from.
Okay.
Per tap of trees.
Yes.
Yeah,
not per
we
tap
try,
of-
we try to hopefully have enough of that to pay for the taxes.
And so here we have water, and as Jill had pointed out earlier, it's over 14% increase largely due to the new debt service.
Mhm.
So,
So what does that put the rate, the water rate to?
well, that's a question.
So-
Can I ask a question while you're on that?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I'm glad you put not sure what this works.
Yeah.
That was a question I had. And then if you go down, like this year's budget says capital improvements, we spent almost $78,000 in capital equipment for 3850. Do you know what those were for? I'm sure we talked about this, but I don't.
Yeah. Let's see. Capital. So,
That's not that you spent, you just did, you lent to, the lane across from the highway department, and the rest of that is.
Also lane 30,000.
That's what the 70, that's part of the 77, that's the
Yeah.
loan.
That's
Okay.
just the loan, and then the savings put over into the account this year. There wasn't 81,762 spent in capital this year.
right. And actually, the.
But how much was? Do we know that?
The 77,892, that was for, well, Lawson Lane, but also for the connection to serve Bristol Works.
Okay.
And we got reimbursed for that. So there should be an offsetting revenue on that, but it should be coming out of the capital fund and not the operating budget. So that needs to be moved.
How come we're showing 81 there and you're saying 77?
Well, no, this is,
Yeah. Where'd you get?
well, because that's the third, it includes the equipment capital.
Yeah, because there's 77
They're separate.
plus
Plus
3. Yeah.
3850.
Okay,
And there should not be two separate lines.
Yeah.
It should just be one line.
okay,
So
And then-
that 81 combines those two numbers.
gotcha.
And the water system charge of 6689, what, it's a wording thing. It's like, what is that?
Where are you?
It's just up from that, bottom of the first page.
Okay, yeah, water
DT
system
water
fee. Yes, I looked up that too.
Glad we're on the same page.
Yeah. There were 4 payments to the state for our water system permit operating fees.
Okay, so those are permitting fees.
Right, and some of these just don't make sense. One says credit card, one says, 3 of them are state of Vermont, and one of them is, so there's 5 entries, and one of them is to the state treasurer. So I'd like to get more information about that
So
too.
the water system fee, Jill, is that the one you said last time is based on the usage? And that's why we're up, because we're pumping so much water in the ground?
Based on, so the state of Vermont is charging you for making water by the gallon.
Of course they are.
We're not making it. Mother Nature made it.
They're charging you money.
We're
It's
just-
another tax.
We're just pumping it.
Tax number 567 is the
So
water
they have to get
production
theirs.
fee by the state of Vermont. Yes, they charge you
I love
money
'em.
for you making water for your water system by the gallon.
Gotta love them.
Valerie, can you-
So for our rents, we're budgeting 339,900, but our actuals are way below that. We're missing one, right? that's not,
Yeah,
Where are you
there's
one more
Water
quarter.
rents.
Oh, water rent.
this represents only 3/4 of them.
Okay.
Yeah.
And did we find out if it's accrual or,
It's a combination. That some things are accrual and some things are not.
Oh my God, can we get to one way or the
all
other?
right, we need.
It's largely accrual though.
Can we make
We
it all
can't-
one
we
way or
can't
the
say
other?
it's largely, we need to have like the
Yeah,
Well,
definitive answer.
apparently the water system and sewer systems are accrual, but other municipal aspects of the account are not. I don't know the answer, and I could not get a clear response. I don't know.
Who are you asking?
That was,
Sharon, probably.
yeah, I'd like to have more conversation with the treasurer.
Yeah, we need to figure
So-
that out.
So I took the 294, we've actually took in $294,162. Divided by 3 and times every 4, and that comes up to 392. What we're
232.
budgeted for.
Right.
So we expect to sell the same amount of water at the same rate. Or in the next couple of weeks' readings, will push us to close to 392. Am I looking at it wrong or?
390.
That's the proposed budget. We only need
342.
343 for last year.
Right, 343 for last
I
year.
remember seeing 343. Oh,
And then
342.
20.
Budget.
23,
23, 24.
I just took the
budget.
296 and she said it was
Yeah.
3 reads, not 4, so just for
Yeah.
easy figuring. So is the 392 budgeted or what we expect to take
That's
in?
what we're budgeting for
Right,
next year.
but
Right.
is it budget for improvements or that's what I'm asking? Do we really need 392 to make a 14% increase?
You do if you
want-
wanna pay the new bill.
Yeah.
You gotta
Like
pay
that.
your new bond and still put money into your capital improvements fund, then you would need to. If you don't wanna put money into your capital improvements fund and not have any money saved up for emergencies, then you wouldn't necessarily need a rate increase, but you'd have no money, very little money in savings.
Okay, so 342, what we budgeted last year, and if we have a read here in 2 weeks or 3 weeks, and it comes in close to the 392,
No, no,
We
no,
gotta
no,
keep-
you're not looking, you're looking at revenues.
yeah, you take
But
that divided by 3 and
That's
times it by
not
4.
revenue. That was the wrapping of the cells. Revenues are way up here. They're 245 for
252,
quarters.
578, divided by 3, times it by 4 is $336,000.
So we're gonna be short from our budget.
We're still gonna be short by, we budgeted 392 next year.
We
So
budgeted.
No, we budgeted
Three.
342 this
And we were,
current year.
okay, speaker, I'm sorry, we're $6,000 short in water. That's hoping they fill swimming pools in May and June and we get a little more.
Yes.
Okay, Valerie, would you do me a small favor and just for my, see where it says miscellaneous revenue,
Mhm.
$100?
Yeah.
Put that at $50,000
50,000?
or $25,000,
Over here, 25,000?
right there, just for discussion only.
You giving us a private?
No. Okay, that raised the,
Raise us another
Revenue.
7%.
okay, I don't understand that, but the revenue went up, but what's the budget line? What's the budget going down? What's the increase in the budget?
Nothing.
No, nothing.
Nothing. Okay,
It's probably not
my
calculated.
thought was, to Peter's question, is there $40,000 or $50,000 in the undesignated fund balance out there floating around that's really belongs to the water department?
Right.
That's what I was going.
So what
Right.
you're looking to do is not raise the rates to 14.4%. That's what you're attempting to do, correct?
Oh, I was trying to get it a little, yes. trying to-
But ultimately, you're gonna have to do that.
Right.
I mean, if you put unassigned funds in there, you're just making it
You're-
worse for
you're
the next
kicking it-
year
you're
because we
kicking it.
don't have,
But
We aren't gonna
that
have
money's
that
gotta
every
get
year.
into the water
We'd
system.
better,
if it's
we'd
out.
be
well,
better
no, I don't
off,
agree with that.
we'd be better off to pay one of the,
Bonds
one
down.
of the notes down.
No,
Right,
correct.
exactly. So we don't
Get
have
rid
as
of
much interest.
accruing interest on debt would be how I would use that.
Yep.
I would say, okay, state, we're not gonna borrow 750, we're gonna borrow 500 or 400, and the rest comes from designated, undesignated fund balances that had not been allocated.
So right there, oops, I'm sorry, Joe, I cut you off.
Yeah.
But right there where Valerie's got it highlighted, $111,699 there.
Yeah,
Mhm.
You could say, we're gonna put, if we have revenue, we could say we could put half of that undesignated fund to that line. Okay,
I mean, the other
Right, you would
way
take it
is that,
down.
the other way in terms of revenue is that you do a blending over the year. You're increasing the rates a smaller amount. You're
Yeah.
using some of the unassigned funds
Offset
and
the
you
rest.
offset it,
Mhm.
whatever.
Well, you don't,
Where would
you
they
never
intersect?
use unassigned funds to do operating expenses. You always use it for
yeah.
either capital improvements or,
Okay.
because otherwise you're setting yourself up for,
because that's what's gonna happen. at
Well,
school.
you're easing in and easing out, right? But I understand. I mean, you could do it that way, but it eventually has to come from somewhere. But paying down what the debt is the best.
That's
yes.
right, yeah.
Valerie,
Yeah.
can I see a couple more?
And that 111
21,
potentially goes to
22, 23.
goes to 50,000, let's say, if we had that much in unassigned. And where it's then your increase, your 14.4 changes to 6 or
Something
whatever,
lower.
and then your 6 up the top there. Yeah.
But if we do raise it 14%, what does that make our rates and how does that compare
what was it,
to
like
other
$9
places in
$9 a
Addison
quarter, I
County?
think? Was that what you said, Joel?
I guess what I'm trying to figure
I
out,
didn't
since
have
this is
that
my
right.
first year, is like, are we already with super low rates and raising it 14% would be average? Or is raising it 14% going to like move us into the most expensive water in the
No.
county?
We're one of the cheapest water districts around.
Well, part of it,
But-
the price per gallon is about the same,
Mhm.
but it's that initial calculation, our standard
The flat
fee,
rate.
the flat rate, that's where it differs. Like Middlebury is much more expensive than Bristol is.
So if we
And that's partly
introduced,
because of the REU calculation that hasn't been correct for all these years.
so if we introduce the flat rate and point to the fact that we're now going to be in compliance with the state, that would then take care of the budget problem, or we would still need
Next
to
year.
increase?
We're not prepared to do it this year.
Okay,
Valerie, can I see what we?
It's a combination,
2021?
Yeah.
unfortunately.
I see the 258.
We're not,
We-
Revenue.
we didn't figure the CRU thing out quick enough to be able to use it in this budget.
okay,
Yeah,
We might by the next meeting.
because this
Right.
budget we
Oh.
need to pass quickly, right?
right. This budget's now, unlike all the other budgets, which are
In-
for town meeting,
Right.
this has its own separate path.
Yeah.
And I don't know, is there a reason for that? That this is now versus why we couldn't
Because
do it?
Because we can do it, it's not. it's
We
not-
can pass the budget, it doesn't need to be voted on.
Oh, that's right, yes.
Okay.
Are we able
We
to do
just
this?
have to do it by July 1.
Right.
So we do need to do it.
I see, so we're doing
Okay.
we're doing a fiscal
Or
year.
after July
Valerie.
1, it would be retroactive.
Yeah.
Just have to read.
Okay, before you move that. Can I now just scroll up to 21-22?
Right, do we want to do another budget in budget season or another 2 budgets, add it to the already
But we
enormous
also
budget?
don't know if there's money that's missing that could be in this account, so.
Correct.
Well, it's not, is,
It's not
Missing
missing,
is-
it's unassigned. The unassigned part of it is that it was actually assigned somewhere else for a number of years, potentially. And so some of that revenue could be used or should have been used in this particular.
The
part.
general fund may owe the water.
district.
And
Water
will we
district.
know that before we need to pass this budget?
I truly
Hope
hope we
so,
will have a
but
lot of these
we-
answers.
no
by the next
guarantees.
meeting.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
We
we need
could-
to pretend like it's not there and
Right.
pass a water
Correct.
rate increase is
Correct.
basically what I'm hearing.
Well, even if we do find it, it's really a matter of putting it down the bond.
Well,
It's not
right, but
really-
that would
Because it might not,
decrease-
not necessarily, I mean, it might not decrease that percentage of increase initially.
Can I ask
It'll
you one
only-
more time? Scroll down.
We
It'll
would lose
only-
the- we would
it'll
lose the
only-
interest.
Create a shorter timeframe or a less payment
Okay.
for the bond.
It'd make
Well,
the
the
bond payment
interest,
lower.
right,
yeah.
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
So any savings there could then
Right.
offset the rate
Incidentally,
increase.
Jill reminded us at a previous meeting that the Select Board Water Commission needs to execute the loan by the end of the month, or else we lose it. And.
It's not looking promising like they're gonna do anything based on. the
Well, based
information
upon,
that they
yeah,
have.
and the responses we got today.
Yeah.
Nice that we got responses though.
Yeah,
Yeah, but they're all the same.
they're all negative.
Yeah, which is
We're not
too
doing
bad, so
anything to
sad.
pursue. That's right.
Go
It was
pound
done
sand.
right and.
Yeah.
It was calculated right and.
Right,
Can-
correct.
But
So
even,
we're-
even on the administrative fee, there's no.
Yep.
Nothing.
Pretty much.
Yeah, so the question between now and the next meeting, if we want to reduce the amount of the loan that we take out, and we have to put that request in. I don't know how long it would take to process for them to kick out an updated loan document with a lower loan amount.
Well, so the only way we can do that is to determine about the unassigned funds,
Mhm.
correct? Or, I mean, that amount needs to come from somewhere else.
Is it like
to make
any
that-
other loan where if you pay extra,
Doesn't
It's
matter.
still over 30 years. It's still over 30 years.
it's still over
Yeah.
30
Right, but
years,
less
but it
the
would
payment
reduce
we
it.
It
It would
would
reduce the payment.
Right.
Right. So is there, we just need to know, we can execute the loan document as long as there isn't a penalty for prepayment.
Sure.
Because then we can write a big check
Yeah.
for the principal and
Okay.
then the interest will drop.
Yeah.
Lots of years of student loans. So I
I
have a lot
don't
of
know, I don't
experience.
know if they would I don't know if they would recalculate your amortization though. I think they're still gonna leave you at the same annual payment. You'd be better off paying upfront and having them re-amortize over the 30 years with a lower annual payment.
Right.
Right, but won't they do that automatically? So if
Mm.
Not necessarily.
They don't
I mean, like, if you
re-amortize
pay-
your
if you have a
loan.
mortgage and you pay extra on your
Yeah.
principal,
Yeah.
they don't re-amortize it. It just
It just-
eventually
yeah.
you're gonna pay it.
Your
quicker.
last payment, they'll tell you.
Your payment will be the same.
Right, right.
But you-
But you'll be paid off early.
Right,
Yeah, you
right.
pay it off early, but but if you're trying to reduce the payment is what
Yeah.
Jill's saying, is you wanna pay it up front so you're borrowing less. So then the payment amortized over the 30 years is less.
Yes.
Otherwise,
You
you're just
want them to
basically paying
take-
for its principal.
Yeah, 500,000 at 2% over 30 years and not 750,000 at 2% over 30 years. Like you
Yeah,
want.
I
them
don't
to
think
get
we're gonna
paid.
find $250,000 though.
No.
You never know, whatever it might be. It would be nice to have them amortize a smaller amount with their stinking interest rate.
Can I just did some calculation here. It goes back to Peter's question about, is there money out there that owes the water department? And who knows right now? The auditors, I guess, can't tell us. So I asked Valerie, you saw me scribbling here. I asked Valerie to go back. 2021, we took in $303,690. Now scroll down, Valerie, to show the revenue or the expenses for that year.
So
That was the
that was the expenses, which was less than what was
303,690.
budgeted, which is where you're going with that.
Yeah, so it was- we had
Also less revenue.
We had 45, am I correct in saying?
We had less revenue in 2021 than we budgeted. for.
258, what was the
The
expense?
expenses were more than that.
Yeah.
So we were in
303.
the red.
So we were in the red, 45,189. The following year, we took in actual
341.
341, and we had expenses of 296,835.
Mhm.
So we had a $44,877.
Okay, that just wiped that out. Wipe
So,
those two out.
You add those two together, you got $312 you still owe somebody.
Mhm.
Okay, but 23, we have revenue of
342.
Actually came in good.
342, 282, 281, and we had expenses of $300,993
42.
or 41,788. That's for our, is there $441,000, $42,000
Right,
Yeah.
right.
out there?
I mean, we could pay the one they wanted us to roll in, we could pay that. We could always, well, we can't hold it out and then pay it.
But I guess the question, we can't blame Jessica, because she wasn't here in 2021. No blame here. Was we overspent by $45,000.
Yeah, but what happened?
What
We had-
happened
We
to
had,
do that?
we had issues, was it up by sergeants where we had to cut the road and that bill was
Mhm.
40 something
Yeah.
$1,000 when
Or
we-
the thing
But-
froze, the
Yeah.
pipe
So is that
froze.
why we raised the revenue to pay off that the following year? Yeah, those are questions I think we'll never get answered, but,
We'll
With the past
do
treasurer.
some calculations and see what we can come up with.
but I'd like to know where
if we have any money.
Right, right.
Can I
Might-
ask a dumb question?
there's no
Can you
dumb
guys-
questions.
Can you guys run a budget report for each fiscal year of revenues and expenses and just look at 10 years and do a report? Is there such a thing in your accounting system?
Yes.
Because like
Good
that's how I would approach it as a
Like just
person.
to look for the delta above,
Right.
how much percentage above or below.
Well, yeah,
Just
like
know-
can't
just
you
to find out how
can't
much
you do?
money we either
Oh.
owe.
Yes.
or-
We can,
Oh,
we
yeah.
can, all of it is in NEMRIC. It's the question is, has it been put in NEMRIC correctly? And we've had a lot of issues with that we've discovered that go back many years.
But the water should be all correctly. Water should have been,
Clear.
Not
Clear as mud.
necessarily.
it generated these numbers.
Well.
Are those real?
I think
that's
somewhere
question
there's
for some of them.
$41,476 by just going those 3
Yeah,
years
yeah,
back.
yeah.
I mean, that's just in 3 years. If you
Right.
went back another 3 years, you find another 40,000.
Yeah,
It's more common throughout all of our departments and parts of our budgets that we come in under budget. We spend less than what we budget for, and we bring some, and oftentimes even bring in more revenue. than
But
budget.
I'm guessing that this money was all put into the general fund and
Yeah.
it got lumped into that unassigned funds.
I would just feel a lot more comfortable with the increase. I mean, it might not be a big deal, right? Like if I guess I would just like to know where we would fall in with this new water rate. So if we say to water rate users, for years, we tried to keep this as low as possible, but now we've run into these legacy problems where you have to do these repairs and we need to increase the rate. However, the rate we're increasing to is like right in the middle for Addison County, right? Like, I think that would be an easier sell than we're increasing your water rates almost 15%.
Well, when we
You know
go,
what I mean?
when we go and change the ERUs next year,
Right.
we're gonna have a fairly considerable increase.
At some point, do we have?
The commercial
a-
ones are gonna see it.
Do we have a
commercial
plan to put in the
The people. who
meters,
have-
the
yeah.
smart meters?
Take that one, Jill.
I wish,
I mean,
I wish there was a plan. I mean, you probably need $500,000 to $1 million to do it, but it would be awesome. I would love it.
Well, I'm
because
just thinking about all the ones you can't read, or they don't let you in, you can't read, they don't work, whatever. And I don't know how many there are, but I know there's some versus the ones you can. I mean, those people that they're either broken and they won't let you in, or you can't read them. We aren't giving them a bill, an accurate bill.
Well, also
they're
the
just getting a
time it
minimum
takes
use.
To
Yep,
do
minimum
it.
use.
Right, because Jill, you can just ride around, you don't have to get out. If we
Right
have the smart
now-
meters in place, you
Yeah.
you could just ride around and, right?
Oh, yeah.
You don't need to get out.
That's how the smart meters would work essentially, but right now we have to walk and touch every single touchpad on everybody's wherever it's hidden on their house and literally physically touch it.
But
How many meters can you not read or you don't have access to?
I
they're
have
not
access
functioning properly.
all of them. I have about 19 of them that go meaning that I can't get a read from them because whether the wire inside the house is broken or the meter's not functioning properly. And yeah, there hasn't been great
Just
success.
19, that's it?
No, let me be clear. There's 19 I can't read.
Okay,
There's
Right.
like 3 pages, which I think there were 30 entries. There's like 90 of them that aren't reading
Right.
flow from what I can see on the report that I saw for the first time ever a couple months ago and went, that was when we were trying to discuss equivalent residential units with the state based on flow, like consumption.
so those are 90 meters that we may only be doing the base rate and they aren't getting a bill for water usage.
Out of the
And some of
90,
them are apartments, if I recall correctly.
I would have to look at it again, but I
Well,
think that it's
But the base rate is 9,000 gallons. Out of those 90, they would have to be they'd have to be using more than 9,000 gallons a quarter.
if
Is that right, Joe?
Yep, to get paid, to get billed more, so I just can't tell. If
Right.
they're using more than 9,000 gallons, we can't tell because it's showing, 0.
out of the 90 that you can't get an accurate reading, how many of them have been contacted and won't let you in the building to change?
Most of them.
I've only contacted the 19 that I can't read because they go, So I didn't even know about the zeros until like just a couple months ago, and we've been in the middle of all of these other interesting, fun, delightful projects of change since then, so.
Yeah, I think we need to do it.
Doesn't our ordinance say definitely says for lack of payment, we can shut you off, or lack of.
Well, they're paying,
They're paying.
They're not being billed.
they're just not being billed correctly.
Well, if they're
Or
denying
may
them to
not
let
be,
in.
may not be billing correctly.
We have, let's say we have 25, they're not letting you in to change them, go off the curb and shut it off.
I think Jill's point is that there's just been too much else going on. They
Right.
haven't had time to turn attention.
There's
to.
quite an effort to then address. First of all, there needs to be a little more effort to get into the ones that we know are device errors that do the that I definitely know the locations. And then there's kind of like what I would call step 2. And maybe that bigger conversation in, okay, these step 2 ones that are reading nothing, do we replace them with these do we replace them with the iPearls or do we start switching over? And my preference would
The
be to
smart
switch
meters is
over.
gonna have to be the way we go.
I
I mean, that's
strongly
the
recommend-
future.
I
That's just the future.
I strongly
we-
recommend it.
If we put in 100 smart meters in the next 2 years, do we have the equipment to read? Do we have to have different equipment, drive by in your car? What does that cost?
That's the thing, is that we've got to do an analysis, and what happens is we'd want to make sure that meter reading equipment that would read the smart meters versus the meter reading equipment that we have now that reads the census meters, how would we delineate between who has which type of meter, what still needs to be read manually, what needs to be read, what is being read automatically already? How would we delineate the areas? And how would we know that everything got billed, right? Because right now they put the Archer, which is the handheld device, down into the to the plugin, and then all the data comes over across into Census. Census takes it and then it feeds it into your NEMRC accounting system. Then NEMRC accounting takes it and throws it into your billing rate structure. So there would need to be that multi-step process and understanding how can we run two simultaneous metering systems? What would we need for devices? How would the software work? And how do you make sure that each person is getting a bill at each quarter so that there
Yeah.
isn't an inconsistency or overlap?
I think a goal for this year would be at least the minimum, do the 19 or 20 readings that you get on, you say, and
Yeah,
get them. And then start working on the ones that are just giving you the base minimum.
yep, agreed.
Get the 19 done because
Are you
Yeah.
talking just get them read or?
Get 'em read, the
Oh, I thought you were
19.
saying put the smart meters in them.
no.
Get
Because-
them corrected, right?
No, at the minimum, get the 19 fixed.
Yep, agreed.
Any grant funding for
That's what I was
going to
thinking.
smart
Right.
meters? I'm
I
sure
don't
there
know.
are
There
Water
might be.
further
modernization.
other priorities in terms of.
Reduce our carbon footprint because Jill wouldn't have to walk all
Right,
around
there you
town.
go. I like
Oh,
your
wait a
first
minute,
try.
she's walking.
She had less exercise though, so that might
I
be.
mean, Middlebury has changed their meters twice, they're changing hours again. This summer, I got a notice the other day, they're coming in. Actually, I had to send them on I did it, Beaker, on a smartphone, I had to take a
Take a picture.
QR code.
QR code for Otter Creek Engineering's doing it, and set my meter in and what it looked like, and
Wow.
copper line, and
Well, if Middlebury's changing, can we get their old meters? Maybe there's.
they're they're my telephone.
They're putting in.
What I
smarter
love about
meters.
their meters is, you got a huge bill, which we did at Route 7. And I called them up, I said, boy, this thing's gone off to the roof, what happened? They look back and they go, February 3rd, you had a major water leak from February 3rd till we read it.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
know.
Went
they're-
down,
they're
they,
that
the
smart.
staff said,
yeah,
yeah,
that's.
we
that's
kept
the
hearing the
advantage
toilet
of
run
smart
about that
meters,
time.
get a full
Do you think you
breakdown.
could tell me? So it was good, they tell you right when the date in the 90-day cycle, they can say, oh, your usage started going up.
Mhm.
Yeah, clean.
Okay, so what's the next phase for the budget? So you're still working away. You're gonna try to find some calculations in terms of not the ERUs, but
Maybe.
maybe ERUs and maybe unassigned.
Yeah.
I'd like to,
If you can work with the treasurer on that.
Yeah.
I just did 3 years and
Oh,
just by what I see on the.
I think we have, so
I'll
is our
read
next
anymore.
meeting next week or the following?
Following.
The following
The
week.
following week, unless you are inclined to have a special meeting, but we might not have everything together. by then.
Can we have the treasurer be present on that? So if we add questions.
That would be ideal.
They can NEMRC on the
They can
spot.
never.
Yeah, we can speak NEMRC.
Yeah,
And
well, it'd be nice to be able to, like, if we have questions,
Yeah, to
they
just
can, because Sharon's done that before. She's
Right.
we've had questions and she's like, there it is.
Exactly, yeah.
Which would be
And
great.
can we also check the water rates, like how, like, do we
Yeah.
know if we can get like an apple to apple, like, because if somebody does a flat fee and then a usage fee, like, can we get an understanding, of if we do raise by 14.5%, where that would put us compared to other places?
We're still gonna be way cheap.
We
Like
will
I
be,
said, I think it's only like $9 a quarter.
again, but for us to
Would be
share
12.
that out with.
If it's 90 a quarter right now, 14% brings it up $12 a quarter, which is $4
You
a
can-
month, which is what, $48 a year?
Okay.
So
But
that's
we need
what
to
the
get data
average.
about what other towns do.
Right, so we can tell people, so they won't freak
Right.
out.
Right,
I could email, at least give you guys what we, in the 5 different locations we pay.
Okay.
Brandon, Middlebury, Virgins, and Heinsberg,
sure.
That'd be
Yeah.
great.
Is yours for Jen's? or-
Penn Water District.
It's not Penn.
Penn Water District, so 3 towns.
You guys,
Tri-Town?
there's a website, there's a website that has almost all the water rates for the entire state. I sent a
Yes.
link at the last meeting. It's already, all that information is already published. So
It's
you
a
can
little,
look at,
little confusing to read, though, I have to say. I was looking at that, and I'd seen that
Yeah.
before, but it is kind of hard to decipher. I don't know if you have a better handle on that. But maybe we can talk about that. I'll send you that then.
Okay, Stephen's been hanging on here,
Yeah.
so
Yeah, sorry. Steve.
So-
I think we beat up the rate structure, we haven't got anything. So Bristol water line replacement schedule review, Steve.
A little step.
Hey, I got any milk and cookies tonight or?
Yeah, what are you having there?
No, I'm double duty here. I'm working in
You
the
got some
background.
Dakin
So sorry.
Farm, got some Dakin Farm syrup on them too, or no?
No Shelburne Sugarworks ice cream tonight, none of that.
All right, what's Steve talking about?
Can we share here?
Yep.
Oh,
Good to
before I
go.
get going, I wanted to make sure that we wish Valerie a happy 39th birthday.
Happy birthday. Is it today?
Yesterday.
Yesterday? Happy birthday.
She brought cake, cupcake.
I know. Wow. All right, we gotta make a note for that. Wait, it was yesterday?
Correct.
All right, I'm gonna make a note of that.
Let's see.
Day two. It's Chad's birthday too.
Oh, my.
I could have cake today.
Yeah, we had conversations about what it's like to be a Gemini.
Can you make it bigger, Steve?
Yeah.
No, we don't need to see that.
Is that better?
No, that's not better. That looks like a sewer line, not a water line.
Now, why would Jill tell us that that needs to be sanitized? Chlorine.
All right, I'm gonna do this. Yeah, that, by the way, is a piece of pipe from Pine Street. I thought it was kind of interesting. It's a neat shot.
Wow.
Yeah,
That is interesting.
that's an old line that we actually tied into. Jill, I'm trying to remember. I can't remember if that was
Munsell
maple.
Avenue, wasn't it?
Was it?
Didn't you tie in there, you tied into Munsell Avenue, I remember you took.
We did, but I think this particular one was maple.
The one Picker did, we did in middle, we did that on nighttime.
Yeah, it gives you a good idea what's in the ground, right? So lots of mineral buildup in there. All right, hey, there were some questions at the last meeting about schedule and how we're doing overall. And I think it's kind of good to review this stuff every now and again.
Can you make that just a little bigger, Steve? Cause it's all teeny tiny.
Like
Really?
microscopic.
Yeah.
Okay, let's try this.
Can you do like present? Yeah, there
Present,
you go.
yeah, your present.
Is that better?
Yeah, that's
That's
the
the
pipe.
pipe.
Jump back. So go
Just
forward or
just
backwards.
forward through your slides or
Yeah.
something.
Okay, how's that? Can you see that? Now? That's
There
full
we go.
screen.
That's better, yeah.
Still
Well, I
tiny.
do think it is. I can't read it.
Well,
I don't know how to make it any bigger than it is. I'll
Figure it out.
I'll read a little bit of this to you just so you get it. So what, if you guys remember, we had 4 phases that we split this up into, right? And I apologize because there's actually some new folks here too. So when we looked at the 1905 water line replacement, we realized it was too big a project to take on as one single project, right? Number one, the costs were, I'm going to tell you, they're north of $10 million. And in addition, you know, you guys all realize this, you know, there's a tremendous amount of disturbance with this, right? And the public will only take so much of this at one time, right? You can't have the entire town torn up at once and nobody can get anywhere. And people get construction fatigue, and you really need the public support through these projects. So I think doing it in phases, and I think you folks, we were all on the same page, made a lot of sense at the end of the day. We split this up into 4 phases. The very first one, obviously, was Pine Street. That's done. That's complete. That's why we're starting on phase 2 in this spreadsheet. Hey.
Only 3 more to go.
well, I mean, one major one's pretty darn good, I have to say.
It took us
Yeah.
15 years to get that Pine Street done.
Yeah. I think it's sad the way the funding ended up, but you know, I could spend an hour on that. But to penalize people for working hard to keep your rates down and to, you know, bring a project in under budget, which the state has probably never heard of. I think
They were so shocked.
it's sad. It's sad. It's too bad. But anyway, it is what it is. So, you know, we broke this up really into 3 phases saying, all right, you know, the 2 in the first one is obviously, we call them Bristol West, Bristol East, and then we got Rockydale, right? So we split Bristol up into really 3 sections, okay? The green is Bristol West, that area. Don't mind my circle right here. We were doing this for a different purpose. The purple, if you will, or pink, whatever color you're seeing, is Bristol East, and Rockydale obviously is down here. And we kept Rockydale off on its own because we all believe at the end of the day that we probably need to do some additional investigative work on what options are out there really for Rockydale, because it's so far out there. You got to cross a mountain. There's a lot of unknowns, and I think there's a tremendous amount of cost to replace that. I think everybody does. So I think that's one we're going to probably look at some alternatives for that before we actually do it. Bristol West and Bristol East were pretty straightforward. We broke this into about 10,000 foot segments, okay, more or less. And each year, so you'll see this right here in Bristol West, there's 9 different streets, okay? There's more than 9 street segments because things like Pleasant have 2 different segments, right? We've got different size lines on different segments. But you get the idea, right? We're at about 10,000 feet, or we will be by the time we're done. So, and we did the same with Bristol East, okay? I've kind of highlighted this one here, and keep that in the back of your mind. This, I really want to sit down with Jill and Valerie and talk a little bit more about this, but we might come back to you at a later date and ask that we include what's in yellow up here in Bristol East. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that later on. I think it fits better into one of these 2 projects at this point than probably Rockydale was or will, but we're gonna talk more about that.
Steve, how much footage was Pine? It wasn't 9, right?
About 2,600.
Okay.
Before you go on, just a quick question, where all you have the area, the pipe size, is the plan to put the same pipe size in all areas? Or are you just replacing them with what's currently there?
No, see where it says recommended replacement size over here to the right?
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Okay.
Gotcha.
Yeah, this was based on hydraulic analysis done by Greenhouse Engineering, okay? So
I just didn't look over that far.
I would say the great majority of these, 80% of them get upsized, okay?
Yep.
But Steve, phase 2 won't be done all in 1 year with it, 9,600 feet.
Okay.
Or that's gonna be over a couple of 3 years.
Good segue into what we're coming into, right? So this is a schedule that Jill and Valerie and I brought forward to you guys a year ago, okay?
Right.
And I'm sorry if this is so small, but basically this top is done, right? That was Pine Street, that's complete. Phase 2, we are now right about here, okay? That project is on schedule, I would say, and I knock on wood, we're probably a little ahead of schedule in some regards. This will play out, if all goes well, exactly as it's outlined on here. What I want you to pay attention to is what's right here when we get into Bristol
We
East.
start the next one.
Yeah.
What's that?
I said we start the next one before we're finished the.
Yeah.
Correct. This is what, Jill and Valerie and I have been talking about this, right? And there's some reasons that there's a conflict here. A lot of this is going to take a tremendous amount of this team's time, okay? And one of my big concerns is we're a pretty small group of people here, and I'm not sure, I know we don't actually have the horsepower to do this and this at the same time. The other thing that I think is going to happen to you folks, I think the state, we're going to have some projects that are going to slip in DWSRF, okay? Some projects aren't going to meet their timelines in all likelihood. And what typically happens is funding comes available for certain things on a pretty short notice, okay? And if you're not prepared for them, if you don't have your design ready, you're not going to get an opportunity at that funding. And what that funding usually means is they offer you additional, they want you to spend the money. They want to keep the money in the state of Vermont. They don't want to give it back to the feds, right? Because that's what happens if they don't spend the money. And they typically offer it to communities. Hate to say this, you guys are all going to frown, but at additional forgiveness rate. So the forgiveness rate might not be 50%, it might be 60%, or it might be.
Unless your town's name is Bristol.
Yeah, I know, I feel bad. I did one 3 years ago in Richmond, and they came to us and we basically had 10 days to submit the information, but we had the design already complete. And they got 75% loan forgiveness. It's hard to turn that down. So I'm just trying to tell you, there's some additional opportunities out there. Let me jump one slide up and explain to you where we're at. Okay, I took Pine Street off from here, but this is basically what we were just looking at. And what we're talking about doing all of this in the schedule that you folks approved a year ago was right here. Okay?
Yeah.
What we're suggesting is we slide that up. This phase, it can, at least in terms of design and permitting, we will be done by the end of this year, right? You're gonna be
Yeah.
applying for DWSRF funding in January.
Mhm.
That's what this represents, okay?
Mhm.
And if all goes well, right, if you get a bond approved, let's say in November, DWSRF application goes in January, your funding should get approved sometime in June or July. Okay?
You're saying November this year?
No,
June or July of
2024?
25, right? We will finish the design and permitting this year, like,
2024,
the end of the
okay.
year. We will
So you're
apply
saying
for,
November 2025?
you will apply, well, to stay on the schedule, we'd have to do a bond vote in November of this year, okay?
That's it, that's what I was-
Oh,
that's all right.
wow.
Right? For this
Mhm.
whole phase. We would apply for DWSRF funding in January of next year. So 6-7 months from now, Valerie and Jill and I would prepare an application for construction funding, right? It's a priority list, really. In other words, is your project going to be high enough on the list above all of the others in the state to be granted funding? I can tell you, you rank second in the state on your last application. I wouldn't see, as long as we go through all of the hoops, make sure you get all the points that you can get, why you wouldn't land on that list. They're going to tell us this year, help me out, Valerie, it was about July 1st-ish that they told us we had the funding. So it's somewhere midsummer by the time they actually notify us. We would bid it over the fall and winter. You would go into construction in the spring of 26, right? What we had talked about in the original schedule was to keep that 10,000 feet split over 2 construction seasons, because you're going to do 4 or 5 streets a year, right? We did 1 street last year. Think about that, right? It's 1/4 of what we're talking about doing in this entire phase. So what we were suggesting is we split this over 2 years, 2 construction seasons, okay? That's probably a better way. Same thing down here, right? The idea is that we would have the design and permitting done in 25, okay? This would be ready to go with the exception of the fact that we wouldn't apply for the permit to construct until we get to the end of the year. In the end of the year, we'd go through the same process that we're going to go through up here this fall, right? We would apply for priority list funding in January. You guys would pass a bond vote in November. We'd apply for priority list funding in January. And we would follow this out, right? We would go into construction in the spring of 28 and 29. So in other words, you'd have construction 26, 27, 28, and 29. Okay. And we'd be doing about 5,000 feet per year, more or less. It would get us through these 2 phases of construction totally. Somewhere out in here, and I haven't put a timeline on this yet, we're going to have to do an alternatives analysis for Rockydale. Okay. And I would suggest we do that somewhere out in here. And I just put TBD on here because I don't think that was the biggest priority. The biggest priority would be at the moment, with our team and funding and, getting through these 2 things is a pretty big deal.
And we know for certain that we can apply each year for DWSRF funding.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. And what they're I've been talking with Katie and, I think I shared all this stuff with Jill and Valerie last week, and we will have a whole lot more discussions. I will tell you that the new person that's working for Amy was the person we were working with before. So we have a new person who is the point person for this for DWSRF. Her name is Katie. She's been very responsive to every question that I've asked, unlike what we went through for the last 2 years. So within 24 hours, Katie either sends me an email. She called me Friday, right? Said, hey, I just want to let you know X, Y, Z. So what we had talked about was if we were going to do this over 2 construction seasons, how would the state, for instance, like us to apply for funding? Would they like us to apply for a priority list funding one time for the entire this entire project? Her answer was yes. But what they would like us to do is make sure that we stay on budget. If we needed more money than we applied for because it looked like something was going to go over budget, which they better not, but then we would have to apply for additional priority list funding for additional funds, right? They want us to keep this project separate from this project. So we're going to have a separate, from DWSRF standpoint, a separate project for Bristol West and we'll have a completely separate project for Bristol East. Okay,
So Steve, you're saying that November of 24 will probably bond for phase two.
Two.
And then in 26, we'll bond November, bond for phase three.
correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Now, also on your map, there was a Bristol South. Is that anything?
That's West Street.
We don't have any 1905 water lines in Bristol South.
Okay, good.
So,
Just wanna make sure.
that schedule, by the way, isn't any different than the schedule that you applied for last year, except for the design portion, right? We pushed the design portion back here a year, but
Mhm.
for the bond vote and DWSRF application funding, it doesn't change. Okay, just don't think we have the horsepower between us to do this, and I honestly, that's tough.
If I could interrupt, I want to read an excerpt of the letter we received today from
DEC.
from DEC Commissioner Jason Batchelder. And this is relevant to what we were just talking about. He writes that looking forward, the cost of additional work Bristol undertakes and the new debt service on your just finished project are factors that increase the likelihood of future subsidy for forthcoming project phases. Bristol seeks to finance through the SRF, USDA Rural Development, or other funders. The division's staff are always happy to discuss optimal timing in advance of any borrower.
Whatever.
Yeah, to avoid surprises. The same staff are also available to consult on the best approach to financing projects, whether or not they are financed through the SRF, including stacking contributions from multiple funding organizations. And so what Steve is saying is Katie has already begun to have this proactive experience or offer this proactive experience.
So there's nothing in there that says we will guarantee you 75% loan forgiveness.
Or we're gonna poke you in the eye because
And
you
he's
complained.
bolded that and underlined it.
Yeah.
You can,
We wish.
yeah, you can hear the sentiment in the room that we're not getting warm and fuzzy yet.
Yeah.
We're not getting all, whoa, boy,
Yeah.
go.
Yeah, okay,
Okay,
I'm done.
all right, so you think you have capacity by sliding that back a year or into this year,
Sliding almost ahead, right?
right?
So ahead.
Or ahead, right,
Yeah.
and then back.
As we
All right.
finish, as we finish the design and permitting of this, our suggestion is we literally go right into the next phase, right? And we just hold off.
And so,
Go ahead.
yeah, and phase three you've got it at 10 now, that might include maybe another 4 or 3, depending on what happens with Rockydale and those discussions. Okay.
And I think we'll take on alternatives analysis. I mean, somewhere about in here, we'll probably spend a winter and do an alternatives analysis, right? That's what.
And that seems like it makes sense to put that line in phase 3 versus have it be its own phase.
I mean, I
Being in
personally,
residence? Yeah.
Steve, I personally like this because I thought originally we talked about 26, 27, then take a gap year off and no digging in the village. And then doing 29 and 30, finish phase 2. So this.
Yeah.
This is the original, this is the schedule we ended up as the final. I think you're right, Joel. I think in the original schedule, which was draft that we went through in one of the earlier meetings, I think you're right. We had a gap year in there. And the one that you folks approved, I'm gonna say it was whatever, spring or summer of last year. Was
March of 23.
Thank you. This is the final schedule that you folks approved, where we did not have a gap year in there. And this represents exactly the same thing. I've just gotten rid of, Pine Street because it's done, and I've kept all the construction exactly the same. And like I said, this is where we've slid from here to here. And I'm hopeful that Katie, one of the conversations that the three of us are going to have with Katie shortly is, if there is any special funding because somebody misses their deadlines, we'd like to be first on the list of costs and let us know. And I would, if I was a betting person, I would guess that's going to happen. Somebody's going to miss a deadline.
Let me ask the question then about that. So if we bonded in this year, in November of 24, and you got a call in December and said, hey, whatchamacalltown fell off the list. You guys, are you ready for phase 1 or phase 2? could we go out and dig in 25, spring of 25? Would you be ready?
Yeah,
They told you, we got funding for you if you wanna move 26, 27 to 25, 26.
Yep.
Would you be ready if we got
yeah,
a?
we would gear up to start bidding here, right, instead of bidding out here through the winter. Yes,
Okay.
we would bid the project here. We will be done by the end of this year. We should have all of our permits in place. We really just need a construction permit at this point. And you know, your bid specs will be written, your design drawings will be done, you'll be ready to go out to bid. That's the goal.
You'd have for November 4th ballot or whatever. I don't know if there's an election this year, November 4th.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's called the president election. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. So Joel, the only reason.
You would
the
have
only
a
reason-
number to put on the ballot by October 1st, because we'd
That's
have to
right.
warn it.
That's right. So one of our next steps.
That's 5 months away.
One of our next steps will be to start working on, you know, detailed construction estimates, right? So I need to get the drawings to the 90% mark. And we're gonna hit on that next, and I'm gonna kind of show you where we're at and what's going on. The only reason that we didn't bid that right here, Joel, is because we're not gonna know until midsummer whether or not you guys have been approved for DWSRF funding. If we knew here that you were approved for DWSRF funding, we'd bid that over the winter and spring, right? And go to construction in the spring of 25, like you just talked about.
But early 25, if they called you and said, we've got town dropped out, we've got
Yep.
$4 or
We'll be
$5
ready.
million available to cover your loan, you'd be ready to go in early, mid 25 to
Right.
dig.
I'd probably come back to you at that point, whoops. And say, hey, I'm gonna do something different right here, but yes.
Right.
At what point do we need to have on the agenda an updated engineering services agreement?
It usually takes the state 2 or 3 months to turn that around, Valerie, so we
Okay.
probably should do that. You and I should probably work on that in August or so.
Okay.
Okay. Do we need anything in order to change this? Do we need anything from the Water Commission? I mean, this is a different schedule than they approved a year ago. I don't know. We don't have to do it tonight, but just maybe keep that.
Approved.
I'm hearing consensus.
We'll give you a get her done.
Okay.
Right. So, I mean, so for beginning, according to this schedule, 2026, they'll be in the former village construction, at least for the next 3 or 4 years.
Assuming we get,
Streets.
assuming we get positive bond votes and DWSRF funding, yes.
Just so residents know, but the Pine Street project, though smaller, went very well. I think the town had a very good sort of media campaign about what was happening and updates. Very few issues were had. These are obviously more streets that were digging, but there's no other time to do it. We can continue to push it off. And hopefully once this project is complete in 3 or 4 years, then we have a water system that's gonna help us for the next 100 years.
Or
What?
two or
Longer.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is a project that's setting Bristol up for the next 100 years.
Yep.
Or
And
more.
as
Long
this,
overdue.
Yeah.
this information is coming together, working on plugging this schedule and the expenses into the capital equipment plan.
Yeah.
So that's not quite ready for tonight either.
But I mean, the plans work out, Steve, too, because I know talking with Eric, that there's some village streets that he really wants to get paved in the next couple of 3 years. You know, Maple being one, Liberty and those streets.
Liberty's not on the list.
No, not Liberty, Munsell. excuse me.
Munsell.
Munsell.
Right.
So we should definitely coordinate with this.
Oh, yeah, they have been.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, and honestly, we haven't defined that, and we can have, and we probably will have discussions, all of us, about how we want to proceed with this. You know, do we want to leave it up to the contractor to come back to us with a plan on how they're going to do this over 2 years? Do we want to specify, hey, in year 1, we want 2 or 3 of these done? We can have all those discussions about how that's going to proceed. I think a contractor would probably look at it differently than you folks would sitting on the select board, because they're gonna probably go after the low hanging fruit just to develop some cash flow and revenue. And And if I, for instance, if I was a contractor looking at this, I would probably say, I'm gonna take on West Street, I'm gonna take on Maple Street, and probably Pleasant in year one. Because it's gonna generate a whole bunch of revenue for me, right? Then I'll be able to cash flow the rest of the project with. That doesn't mean necessarily that you folks want to do it that way. And we're, I haven't gotten to that point yet of saying, okay, what makes sense? And I haven't talked to Eric about his plans or anything else. And there's a whole bunch of other things that come into here. So we'll have all those discussions as we go forward.
Okay.
So part of this, by the way, part of the DWSRF process is we need 2 approvals, right? We need to have a public review of the design at the 60% review mark and the 90% review mark. And the 90%, tonight we're going to go through 60%, and the 90% is coming fast. We're, even since I gave Jill and Valerie a 60% set maybe 10 days ago, I would say they've changed. There are a lot of details been added since then. So we're moving along quickly. Okay, this is, I think, better for you guys.
Hey, can you go back one?
Yep.
Is that is the corner of Liberty and Pine, isn't it?
I believe it is. Yep.
That's Deb's house in the back.
Deb's house in the back.
Wow.
That blue line
Yeah.
is the one that used to head over to Plank Road.
This is the one that used to go over to the shop.
Barn.
Shop, that's right.
This is where they tied in that 2-inch line of the shop. Jill has a lot of fond memories about that line. Okay. Hey, I think I'm a visual person, right? I think this is great. This really helps. Whoops, sorry, keep my mouse keeps moving forward here. I think this really helps folks understand visually what we're talking about. Right? I'll leave some of these off with Valerie too, so you guys maybe can have just this sheet hanging up so people can kind of talk about this. But it gives you a good sense of what this phase looks like. Hey, I know it means one thing to look at it on a spreadsheet, and it's a whole different ballgame to look at what's going on here. Okay. Some interesting things. Green Mountain, they did North Street from, I call it the spaghetti intersection. Okay. And I'll tell you why in a few minutes, but from the corner north and west, they went up to Spring. Okay. So this section has been done in the last 10 years. I think it was 2010. Sorry, I guess 14 years. This section has not been done. This will be in the next phase, and there's a whole bunch of other things over in here that were on that list that will go into Bristol East, right? Okay. I'm going to go through these kind of quickly, and I just want to tell you guys what our thinking was. I'm happy to work with anybody that's interested in these. Sit down. In fact, Jill and I and Valerie have a meeting on
Thursday.
I'm sorry, help me out, 11?
Thursday at 11.
And part of our discussion is always about, I always bring a new drawing set with me and we go through where we're at. And if anybody's interested in specific concerns, comments, happy to, have anybody or meet with you separately at any other time. I'm going to go through them just quickly, street by street. So here's Elm Street, right? So everything you see in red, and I like to do things in color because it really stands out, right? You look at these in black and white and your eyes kind of blur after a while. Everything in red is what's existing, okay? So Jill and Cyrus laid out all of the existing lines here. We went and surveyed all of them. Everything in blue is what's proposed today. Okay, and I realize at the scale, you guys are going to have a hard time seeing like individual water valves and how we're going to set certain things up. I'm not sure at this level that it really matters. It probably does at the 90% mark, right? Jill's going to have a whole lot of concerns and Cyrus with how we're doing some of these tie-ins and we're replacing valves, and Eric probably will too, and where the hydrants are going to go. Are they going to be where he's plowing snow, all those kind of things. That's part of a constructability and long-term review that we're going to do after we get through the public portion of this. I'm going to sit down with those guys and we're going to go through all of that stuff from their perspective. Does what I have on paper make sense, or do they want to see changes, and how are we going to do it? You'll see each one of the here's all of these are service lines, right? Here's all the individual service lines going to all the different houses. Okay, you're going to see the same thing on every sheet. Elm Street, just let me talk a little bit about how we ended up with this proposed layout in Elm. And every street kind of has its own nuances, right? About how we wanted to do this and why we suggested certain things. We're proposing to use the south side of the road for the great majority of it, and then we swing up. There's some problems up here, right? If you folks remember this, there's a huge fence up in here, and they've got some buried underground electrical stuff right in here. So our proposal is to come down the green belt, and the reason I want to stay in the green belt is twofold. Elm Street's only 20 feet wide, right? Paved portion is, it's a narrow street. You guys see it every single day. Imagine what we did on Pine Street, right? We had 24 feet on Pine Street and we still had a hard time getting traffic through. On these individual side streets, and most of these streets are that way, right? They're narrow streets with the exception of probably west. We really don't have the pavement width that we had over on Pine Street. So you're gonna, to the extent we can, we were trying to keep the new water lines either on the edge of pavement or over in the green belt. Okay. Pine Street, by the way, repaving costs about $40 a foot when we figure it all out at the end of the day. If that gives you any number. And by the way, oil's going up, price of asphalt is going to go up with. So you can figure on $40 to $50 a foot if we're in the, just to repave. Okay. That's not all the other costs that go with it. It's just asphalt. The reason we swung back in, like I said, there was a whole bunch of things here. So we've got to be able to keep, when we do these designs, we have to keep the existing system completely operational while we install all of this. We test it, and then do all of the individual hookups, right? So that we don't interrupt everybody's water. You can't have people out of water for a month, right? It just doesn't work. So in the design process, we spent a lot of time thinking about how are we going to make sure this system is capable of operating while this system is going in. Okay. So in this instance down here, we don't have any services, right? These services come off from North Street to these last two houses. We're going to propose to cut and cap this. We'll bring this line somewhere up toward North Street and probably end it temporarily here until we go ahead and do the tie-in. We're trying to keep an offset from the existing lines because these things, and Jill will tell you too, sometimes you just breathe on these lines. They're 120 years old, right? And you have issues. So we're trying to, the extent possible, stay away from that. And then we're also trying to replace whatever you guys have here for infrastructure today. If there's a hydrant, for instance, right? We're trying to keep hydrants. I like to keep them, the rules say we can go up to 700 feet. I like to keep them to 500 feet. I think it's a good number. And that's just my rule of thumb in talking with some of the fire chiefs. Hey, how far can you really run a hose? Does 700 feet really make sense? Probably not. That's a long way in an emergency. We've already got a hydrant up here, right? That one's going to do until we replace it in the next phase. So we've got on this section 2 new hydrants. Let me show you what that looks like, street view. Okay, here's a shot down. Okay, we're going to propose, and when you look down the street, you say, geez, this is a perfect place for it, right? We've got all the power poles and everything over here. We've got a bunch of other things to consider as we get further down, but if the more we can stay over here, the less asphalt we're going to disturb, the faster this process is going to go and the less expensive it's going to be at the end of the day. Okay. So I'm going to jump on, I'm going to move right through this because we've got 9.
Just a quick question, Steve.
Yes.
Are with Jill's inventory that she's been doing, her and her staff, are we going to know how many lead lines are in? So I just feel like to see this project one step further than Pine Street. And if they got lead going all the way into their basement, part of the cost is replacing it. Because are those old galvanized lines, if they're leaking, does it really pay us to replace? And it does pay us to replace 8-inch mains from a 4-inch, but if we're gonna let these leakers go from the curb stop into the house, I think they gotta be part of the conversation.
Yes, and Joel, I'm gonna write that down. Can I take that on at the end? Because we could spend 10 minutes on that question. And I think Jill.
We don't need to answer tonight. I'm just
probably want to join.
I know the problem, we couldn't do it at Pine Street because of some easement issues.
Yep. Okay, I got it down here as a response. Okay, so Pleasant Street. Let me show you a picture of Pleasant first, right? Okay, so here we're looking from Liberty Street, right? We're looking east down Pleasant. It gives you a good street view. And by the way, Power, which runs down this side of the road, actually crosses once you get up here to Munsell. And we run down the south side of the street all the way up. So that was one of our considerations in this whole thing. Where are we gonna place these lines, right? And you can see, this is where the street, right? We were looking this way in that picture, right? Here's Liberty. Liberty was replaced. I would have to look at the inventory, but I think it was around the mid-80s. Mid-80s?
Mid-80s.
Okay.
Yeah, we bought our house in 84, or 85, and they were doing it a few years out. It was late 80s,
Right.
88.
There are no as-bills that I'm aware of. They are not at town hall anyway. We couldn't find them. We're gonna do a little bit of work in here with the contractor to try to assess what's there, but our plan right now, if they did what I believe they probably did, is they extended an 8-inch stub off of here is what I'm gonna guess. This is now 6-inch all the way down here, right? We're gonna hopefully grab that stub right here, and we're gonna run down, we're proposing to run down the north side of the road, okay? All the way down. You'll see that in the next, here's a continuation of that, all right? Staying right down the north side of the road. We're gonna hit all these side streets in a minute. We've got to stay 5 feet off storm, by the way. So that's why you see this separation. All these green lines are existing stormwater. And we're going to basically ride the edge of pavement. One of the reasons we didn't go over to the green belt here, and I'm sure that's going to be a question from somebody. There are, whoops, sorry. Number one, there's power that runs down this section, but there are a ton of trees. We get up into here, ton of big trees, particularly. Lots of maples as you get further on up in here. Look at this. We were trying to be sensitive to people's, we're in an urban environment. This one, I don't know what that is. It's probably dead. But up in this section up in here, you can see a lot of these old maples, right? And they're beautiful trees. I think from a public perception standpoint, we're going to get a lot of resistance if we propose to take out a significant number, especially these big old trees. So we were trying to be sensitive to that. It's difficult because you're kind of locked in here. We've got a sidewalk over here. We're going to want to try to maintain pedestrian traffic. The existing water line runs right up this right side of the road. You've got really nice, probably 100-year-old trees right on both sides of the street, and it's a balancing act. Do I think there's going to be impacts to those trees? Sure. I mean, you're not going to, think about this. The root systems, as a rule of thumb, extend as far as the canopy.
Right.
So you're going to see impacts, and you can see up in here. Well, let me go back one. How did I get all the way there? In the wrong section. There we go. You can see some of these big trees we were just looking at, right? They're located on the drawings. We're going to be well within those canopies, and there's not much I can do about that. Other than, if we run a new main line down the center of the road, number one, we're not even going to be able to construction traffic through there, but we're going to be in the same boat we were with Pine Street, where it's essentially non-passable all the way through construction, right? At least the section you're working in. And we wanted to try to, at least, when we're doing certain sections, let's say we're working from Taylor to Maple, we're only shutting down this small section in here, and we're able to, somewhat keep traffic back and forth. And the nice thing about this, you got a pretty good grid here, right? So we can detour pretty easily around most of these sections of work. I think, though, this separates us from power as much as possible, right? Working underneath the overhead lines and having to hold poles every single time is a very expensive and tedious process. And trying to balance the separation between all these things, right? We've got the existing water line, we've got sidewalks, we've got stormwater over here. How much room do you really have to run a new water main and not disturb, the existing infrastructure as much as possible? So it's a balancing act. And there's no right or wrong. It's just, I got to tell you, I sat down with both Eric and Cyrus too, and we spent a morning with this plans, with this layout, and we drove every single street, and I got input from those guys if they thought there should be changes and why and where you thought they should be, and I incorporated all of that into this final. I shouldn't even say it's final. This draft set you're looking at right now. Right?
So what is your thought? You'll run down, I'll call it the westbound lane of Pleasant and West Pleasant all the way to Liberty?
Want to go back here?
Yeah.
So to run down the left hand, Yeah,
west, in center of the westbound lane, so to speak, or
No, it's on the edge of the pavement.
North edge.
Edge.
the north
North
edge.
edge. Yeah.
Well, then you said you're gonna get into the canopy of the trees, that's
Well, there's
fine.
nothing you can do about it.
Well, I think you're even gonna see that, let's look at some of these trees, right? I think you're gonna see that even out in here, you know, you guys have trimmed these trees back over the years, obviously. But you know, even if we ran down the center line, I think you're still gonna see an impact. And if we run down the center line, it's gonna be, it's tight. There's
I didn't mean the center line, I meant the center of the westbound lane.
the center of the westbound lane. So
You know, that's,
So,
you're on this side,
yeah,
center of this?
But,
not the center of the street, but the center of the westbound lane.
Yep. So you're suggesting we slide it over to here a little bit?
A little bit, yeah, that's just a thought.
It
Get out
just-
of that canopy and get out of possibly damaging those bigger trees.
Yep.
even if you're on the center line, you're gonna damage those trees.
Is directional boring an option?
That's what I was just gonna ask.
I'm not sure it's any less in terms of the trees, if that's our concern, right? It's any less. you know,
Invasive.
it's gonna be, there's gonna be a lot of damage. Yeah, and it's, you know, we had some discussion. I'm gonna get into directional boring here in about 5 minutes because we have a section we're actually gonna propose to be directionally bored. And I've got a meeting with a directional boring company next week, and we're gonna talk about, we're just gonna do a constructability review of that section and get their input on that. Directionally boring in this type of circumstance probably isn't gonna be any less expensive than traditional open cut. The other downside of that is there's no way for us to ensure bedding materials at all, right? You need to understand that, you know, when you're directionally boring, I can't see underground, right? And you guys, everything that I've been told, the further to the south that we go, the more cobbles we should expect to see based on the construction you guys have done. So the closer to the river we get, in other words, the more boulders and cobbles that we get. And my hope is that we're going to put a system in that's going to well outlast 100 years, right? And I can't guarantee that when I can't see what's going in the ground. That's a big part of this. And if the costs aren't really any different, or in some cases open cutting, it's probably less. My feeling honestly is you probably should just open cut it. It's just my 2 cents in the whole wide world. But there are circumstances where directional boring is valid and it's a great way to go. And I'm going to show you one of those in just a minute.
A thought about tree roots. In a lot of construction activities with the excavation, it's just kind of gouging out the earth around the tree roots and just kind of shattering them. There are ways to deal with pruning the tree roots in the process of the excavation, where if they're hand cut, almost like trimming the canopy. There's a higher likelihood of less stress and recovery of the ability for the tree to recover without having to respond to all of that other kind of torn up damage. And then if it's just sheer cuts, and it can kind of heal over like a regular pruning job. But it's time consuming and can be costly.
Right, and it's going to require either a full-time arborist or
Someone to do it.
forester
Right.
that knows what they're doing, right? Not a general contractor.
Right. And it's just an extra step in the excavation process.
Right.
Has our tree warden been consulted at all for this project?
I don't know. Did you hear the question, Steve?
Yes, I have not reached out to anyone. I'm not even sure who the tree warden is, but I think that's a valid point. And I wrote
That's
some.
John Swepson from
Okay.
SAW.
Yep, I wrote some general notes. We're just working on general construction notes the last couple of days. And one of the things that we put in there, which we'll review with everybody, is there's going to have to be some tree trimming that goes on here. I mean, you're not going to put an excavator with a 12-foot boom through here, right? So we're going to require either a certified arborist or forester work with the contractor when all that trimming goes on, and that needs to be done under their direction. Right? I'm not a forester, and I couldn't tell you the right way to prune a tree. I'm the last person that should be doing that.
With a chainsaw.
Right, I would recommend that we have our tree person involved
Yep.
with the project to provide information, and, and if we did go the direction of having someone there, when we hit root systems, it's gonna be a minimal additional cost compared to the cost of the entire project.
No,
It's not if, I mean, I can tell
This
you,
project is 3 million, it's gonna add another million to it to have an arborist there.
add $100,000 to it anyway.
That's still pretty minimal compared to the millions of dollars of the project.
I mean, when you factor in, I mean, first of all, the residents love that's what we hear a lot.
I
We're
know.
losing our big old shade
That's
trees.
right, that's what
Hear
I'm
it all the
concerned
time. They'll
about.
show pictures on
Right. Plus,
history.
it's dangerous if we damage these tree roots and another big windstorm comes
Right.
through. I mean, there could be a lot of
Die off.
damage.
So,
I mean, I think just to have, I'm not inviting, them to be a part of the project in terms of they're gonna be there, but I think.
in the conversation.
Yeah, I think that's important. And it shows that the town is doing due diligence to look at this.
Alright.
And hopefully mitigate, the death of trees.
Steve, on
over
the,
the next 100 years.
oh, that's a good point. I mean, that's a big part of this. I mean, if the public's not happy when we're done with this, right, we haven't been successful, so. Big part.
do you want more streets tonight to show us, or do you wanna, I'm
Yeah, let
just,
me zoom right through. I'll move
conscious
it.
of time, it's 9:35.
Okay, church, this is pretty straightforward, okay? We're just proposing to run down the north side of the road. I'll just jump ahead, okay?
Mhm.
Church and Maple. The existing line runs right down through this side, okay? We're proposing to come right along here. We got the same issues, right? Whole bunch of trees, we've got stormwater, we've got other things we're trying to, work our way in between. So we're trying to be as respectful of all those things as we can be. Sidewalks, I'd like to be able to keep pedestrian traffic, away from construction, which means keeping the sidewalks open to the extent we can. We've got some impacts, right? You see these little boxes here? That's where we've got an existing curb stop right up against the sidewalk, for instance, right? There's no way that we're gonna be able to dig 6 feet down without having some disturbance to the sidewalk. Okay, here's my favorite area right here. This is what I call the spaghetti. Okay, and you're gonna see in a minute why I call it that. But here's school, okay? Forget about the north section up in here. As far as this project goes, right, this is school. It ends right about here. We've got an existing stormwater line that runs along here. We've got an existing water line that runs up through here. We're trying to stay away from those to the extent possible. There is an abandoned sewer line, which we didn't show on here yet. I don't know where it went, but there's some as-built plans from the school that show it coming down through here.
Yeah, it was the old high school.
I don't know, you know where it went?
The
Yeah.
river.
I went over out behind Howden Hall.
Okay, right to the river. Yeah,
The river.
Yeah.
makes sense. Yep. So, and what we're proposing is to use the parking areas to the extent possible. I'd like to try to be able to, at least to some degree, maintain some traffic flow through here as we're constructing. We're probably.
Yeah.
So
There won't be any parking now.
We'll probably do one street at a time, right? And then
Yeah.
we'll work our way up to the next section.
So are you aware of the plans to put chambers down through that section of School Street,
Yeah, no,
Infiltration chambers,
in between the playground and where you show the water line?
in here?
Yeah,
Oh, I am not. We just need to be.
there's there's a big design that we have.
Okay.
I'll get that to you.
Yep, that would be helpful. We'll put it in our plans.
Yep, it's right there. It's right in the same spot.
Are they in the asphalt?
Yes,
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's why I'm bringing it up. Of course, maybe we put the water line there, then we don't have to worry about doing the chambers.
there you go. 10 pounds in a 5-pound sack, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
So that was just a concept. We didn't
Yeah.
really decide we were doing it.
Right,
but
and
it
there's
was
no
a
money for
concept.
it right now
Yeah.
anyway.
But at least I just want you to be aware of it, that's all.
Yep. Makes sense. Okay, you can see pictures, right? Here we are on School Street. We're at the moment talking about coming up through here. The reason we stayed away from this, by the way, obviously, overhead power lines and the existing water line and stormwater coming this area right here, right?
And that's all clay tile that storm line.
So clay tile.
I think, Peter, you could be right. The sections that I've seen that come from up above are actually cast iron, but who know, I've never seen what's down in here. You could well be right. All the other sections that we jetted, and Jill and Cyrus went and jetted them for us, so we know where they were, and we cleaned out all the catch basins and could see where the pipes were going. They were all cast iron. I've never seen that before in a stormwater line. It's interesting. All right, let's talk about West Street, because I think this is one of your more problematic areas, right? Okay, so we're coming from Maple Street all the way down through actually we go, in the next phase, we'll pick up right here. My suggestion or thought on this, GME replaced up to Maple, okay? So everything that you see in red up through here was replaced in whatever, 10, 12 years ago.
2014, I think. On the picture.
Okay, yep. So they tied into the existing cast iron line that runs down west today. We're proposing to pick it up here. And by the way, this turns into 12-inch line right here. And that was in GME's PER. I don't have a choice about that. These have already been sized. So it's 12-inch from here all the way down. This is where it gets interesting, okay? This is a cross section of what's here today, and I call this a spaghetti intersection. And because it's a spaghetti mess, right? It's like a bunch of spaghetti noodles all over the place. All right, we're trying to take a 12-inch line, which is pretty rigid, by the way. You've got right here, the 48-inch stormwater line that comes up through here. The bottom of that line right there is about 10 feet, and that doesn't include the ribs, which are probably another 5 or 6 inches. So we're call it 10.5 feet to the bottom of the line. We need to get through this intersection. You've got the existing AOT conduit that's here. That's the controls for all your lights. We've got an existing duct bank, fiber optic duct bank that goes right up through here to this telephone pole and then comes up above ground at the telephone pole and then also runs this direction. That's that right there. We've got the 48-inch line, and then we've got the existing water main that runs up through here as well. Okay, so we're trying to take a 12-inch line and weave it between all of this stuff. So, you know, to come in here and open cut this, number one, we're going to shut this whole intersection down, and it's not a short shutdown because we've got you're not going to get a trench box in between these utilities, right? For the most part, we're going to have to come in here and shore this. I think this is a couple $100,000 endeavor to do that with an open cut setup. And it's going to be time consuming, and we're going to shut this intersection for the time. As an alternate to that, what we're going to propose is to directionally bore this from an area over in here underneath this line. And don't pay attention to the shape of this right now, because it's probably not the way this is going to end up being. And end this over here. We'll pick this up again in the next phase. The reason that I want to get to this side of the intersection is that when we get to the next phase to the east, we're going to need some way to detour traffic, right? I didn't want to come back into this intersection again and tear this intersection up. I want to be able to have you guys use this intersection as part of your detour. So we can come up, let's say it's Mountain, for instance, right? We've got to replace this entire loop in here, remember? There's an entire loop along Main Street, okay? And it's going to mean some significant disruption to Main Street when we get to that point. I did not at the same time want to come back into this intersection. We could have ended this right here right now. Okay, but I think we're a lot better off getting to this side, stubbing it out temporarily. I say temporary, maybe 2 years, and picking it up at that point and then being able to continue on without having to go back in and tear this all up again. So that was my thought process in getting to here. Somebody could say to me, hey, Steve, I don't care. We can end back here. We're just going to need to detour this traffic through all of these side streets, which I think is going to be problematic from a whole bunch of perspectives. And we're going to get a ton of complaints from people, right? I'd really like to avoid that to the extent possible. And I think it limits how much we need to detour by getting it to this side of the intersection. Okay, I'm trying to think a couple of years down the road.
You did, I thought you said earlier, meetings back, that's probably, there's the night work section of this whole project, possibly night work.
If we can directionally bore this, yep. I think we can limit the impact, right?
Now,
It could be, but if we open cut this, Joel, that's not night work. That's gonna be
okay,
days, right? I can't tell you how many days, but it's not happening in 24 hours, right? Just driving sheeting and all this stuff in between all these utilities is gonna be, we're gonna be down 14 plus, more than that.
right.
Right? And like I said, if we could stack trench boxes, that would be fairly easy to do. You just can't get them in between all these utilities. There's no way to do it. The only way to do it is by sheeting of some sort. And talking with Munson, who put in the stormwater line, they said they had a hell of a time keeping this open when they put that stormwater line at 10.5 feet. So I can't imagine if we're gonna add a few more feet to that. They said they had so much groundwater that it kept caving in on. So, you can imagine trying to shore this and pump the hole at the same time, right? And there's a lot. And I
So
think
isn't
we'd be
there,
a lot better off to directionally bore this if we can do it.
okay, and there's two 12-inch mains that run up Main Street, right? Each side, on the east side and the west side of the
Where are
property.
you? Here?
Going down towards Main Street, yeah. Into a
Yeah.
12-inch main.
That's next project. Let's
yeah,
stick to
and
this one.
I think it's 10,
You
Joel.
wanted to cut pages and now you're adding. No, I'm not adding. I'm just asking how far away when you said you're gonna stub that out. How far away?
You see the red lines? That's the two 12-inch mains.
Yeah.
You see
Yeah,
the
and I
blue
think this-
line? That's where he's stopping.
And I think this actually branches down in here somewhere, and there's actually there's a one that runs down the middle and there's one that runs down each side, I believe.
Okay.
And we didn't go that far in terms of mapping. We stopped right about here. Okay. We do need to map all that out. We're proposing to add a T right here. What I need to figure out in the future is how we're going to backfeed. We want to make sure all this is looped, right? Allen and GME put in this is new. Okay. When they put in North Street, they needed a way to get over here and loop it back in to the east. And they put in this loop. That's what you see underneath the stormwater line. That's this.
Mhm.
Okay. So they put in a bunch of elbows. What we're going to propose is to put a T in here, cap this. So for the short term, this is still going to be looped this way. Okay. This is also going to be, the new one will be looped in up here at the top of Park into this line. And we're going to stub this out temporarily, but at some point in the future, we're going to need to come in here and tie back into this.
The red line, the 12-inch main.
This is new. I don't want to leave anything 1905 in the ground, right? This right here is 1905 line. I want to be able to come in here and tie right into this. Because it was put in, whoops, sorry about that. It was put in 2010, I believe. So I want to make sure everything is, new when we're done. We don't want to leave anything that's 120 years old in the ground. That defeats
We're
it.
gonna leave it in the ground, we're just not gonna water
Yeah, exactly, right.
it. All right.
The point of future failure. That's really the biggest issue here is this, right? And the biggest technical challenge is this part right here. And that's the one probably for the potential for the most disruption to the town and the most costly piece of this, if we're not careful in how we do it.
Is there a best time of year in terms of stuff going on and weather and other things like that? Is there a quietest time of year to do this kind of thing?
Winter.
I think if we're gonna do 5,000 feet, it's gonna take us the better part of 8 or 9 months, because I think collectively, we're probably going to agree that they can't go ahead and tear up 5 streets at the same time, right?
I mean, this big intersection in particular.
Yeah, that intersection.
Yeah, that specific component.
This is one of the reasons that we're gonna have conversations about how we want to phase this, right? But if I were a contractor and you folks told me I was gonna come to you with a phasing plan, this would be one of my first pieces of work right here. I would put this directionally bored stub in from here to here, right off the bat. And then I would open cut West Street. Because this, number one, this is the toughest part right here, right? If you can get underneath here successfully and put these in, you're golden. And this is easy digging all the way down West Street, right? They're going to want to generate a lot of cash flow in the first year. Like I said, there's a lot of expenses to this, right? You got to buy 10,000 feet of line, you got to buy all the materials. they're gonna have millions of dollars into just materials, right?
Is April a reasonable time of year to do that kind of work?
Yeah, you wouldn't want to go before April 15th, right? Let's just
Yeah.
assume at some point we're gonna have a Vermont winter.
Well, I mean, the only,
I-
I mean, the downfall with that is school's still in
Well,
session, so
that's-
you have all the school buses
And
versus
school
summertime when you don't have as much school traffic, but then you have
a lot of
tourists.
other traffic, right?
And
Well, and that's a really valid point, you know, we may say there's issues, you know, in terms of phasing, we're gonna allow the contractor to come to you with a phasing plan, but there's certain pieces they can't do at certain times of year, right? There may be certain, and that's a very valid point you have, right? Are there things that you do that are gonna route flow of traffic to school? Probably not. Until June 15th or something.
Starting to get punch happy.
Okay.
That's
Okay,
not where we're at in the 60% review, but it's a very good point, right?
I think Steve, your plan of going across and capping it seems like the logical way to do it instead of ending before the intersection. I think going across is the way to go.
I mean, we have to cross at some point. The question is, do we do it in this phase or do we do it in the next phase? And
Yeah.
I'm cognizant of how much disruption there's gonna be along these two blocks when we actually do it. And we're gonna shut this down. There's no way around it for some period of time. How do we get traffic at that point through? I think if we can get to here, leave this intersection open, it gives us a whole bunch of alternatives that we didn't have otherwise.
Yeah. Okay.
A lot of our complaints are traffic going through all these residential streets, right? The more that we have, the more complaints we're gonna get. So, hey, I know we're running short on time, so. Munsell, I just want to point out one thing here. Eric asked us to put this stormwater line in, right? I know, Joel, you had a concern about that. We added this week. You'll see, here's the existing line that comes along here. We proposed, Eric's asked me to include this as an alternate in the bid, and we're gonna talk about that on Thursday. So I'm happy to do that. You'll have to, you know, come back and if you guys want to do this as part of, it won't be funded through DWSRF. It could be done by the contractor. We'd have to have a standalone piece of the project, right? It'd have to be funded by the town. Want their drinking water for this money, not clean water. But it's certainly doable and we could offer it as an alternate and it would be fairly, I'm not going to say it's seamless, but it would make sense to me. If you're going to tear the street up with water, you might as well put the stormwater in at the same time if you're really going to do it.
Is that where we were gonna put some chambers too?
Yeah,
Down in there? So is he saying instead of the chambers to do
no, he'd add them, he'd do them,
two?
yeah, because we were
Yeah.
gonna tie it into West Street.
Okay.
That was the,
well, I think, Michelle, you're thinking chambers that are underground that take the water and we don't have.
Well,
no place
right,
to
we
put
were
it.
talking about putting
Dry
it
wells.
somewhere right there in
Dry
the
wells.
intersection.
This
Yeah,
is
well,
not
whatever.
that.
same thing we did out here on Main
Right.
Street.
Yeah.
Well, there's a big difference.
Well, we also did the scoping study for the sidewalk too there, which we
Right.
haven't made a decision on whether we're gonna go ahead with that.
That's again, more money. More money, more money, more money.
Well, it would be helpful. I don't know those things. It would be helpful, you know, if somebody said, hey, we're gonna build a sidewalk along here, it might help us locate these, right? Because my thought is, we're gonna make these open bottom manholes, right? And you're gonna use them
Yeah.
as infiltration galleries. And these lights will essentially
The
be open.
sidewalk was on that side, wasn't it?
I thought, Valerie, the sidewalk scoping study was from West Street to West Pleasant was on the west side of the
I think
street.
they're all on the same side.
They're all on the same
All
side.
ended up on the
East-
same side.
East
It is?
side.
All ended up
On
on
the
the
east
east side.
side,
Yeah.
okay.
That was the preference.
Okay. Anyway, we get together once a month and we go through these and our next monthly meeting is Thursday. So if anybody's interested or reach out to me separately, I'm happy to explain anything we have and take any input and make changes as we need to, right? So,
Is that a meeting that we might have the tree warden or would that be a separate kind of discussion?
I'm gonna add that to our, how about if I add that to our, Valerie, how about if I add that to our Thursday agenda?
Sure.
I'm just not
I
sure.
think
what-
this week's agenda is gonna be heavy on ordinance discussions.
Yeah.
Yeah, John doesn't need to be there for that.
No, just figuring out the
Definitely not.
best use of his time, whether it's a
Right.
separate meeting to discuss the project.
Right.
Right. Valerie or Jill, do you guys want to take on service lines? Joel had asked about service lines. I'm looking at a picture of a service line on the right-hand side here. That, by the way, that's a galvanized service line that came out of Pine Street. That was about a foot-long piece, and you can't see daylight from end to end.
Oh my God.
Perfect.
So we're down to 99 people that haven't responded, and 17 of those are inside of this project area. So we're narrowing down as far as inside of this project area. And so far there are 70. Well, there's 3 lead service lines and there's 67 galvanized lines in the entire water system. In this project area, there's less than 30. One of them is lead. There's less than 30 galvanized. So yeah, that's what they look like. They look like garbage. They fill up with all kinds of stuff. They definitely turn into what I call the salt and pepper shaker. They get all kinds of nasty stuff stuck inside of them, so the flow comes down, and then it just ends up leaking through their entire lawn and even a bit into their basements. So they're like, when we're doing the service line inventory visits, before you even try to put a magnet on it, you can see the water just kind of like, yeah, they're wet, you know, it's not the same as copper.
Right. So when Jill was talking about these get crumbly, right? She's telling you about trying to hook into an existing galvanized line.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, right, these just break and you have to chase it for who knows how far sometimes until you find a place that's solid. It's that crispy. It's
Mhm.
amazing.
Yeah, you knock that stuff off the outside and it goes all the way through.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
How are people even
you
getting
can't knock those
water
clean.
from that?
They probably have really low water pressure.
Right, so given
Yeah.
that, is the water that the particular homeowner is drinking, they're drinking water that's going through that line, correct?
Yeah, they are. And
Their
a lot
last
of the
storage is
a lot of the water that's going through the line is not even getting to their household. It's leaking in the ground. And there is a potential, if there was ever a lack of pressure, that the ground could get into their water.
Right.
You suck it in.
This particular
Potentially.
homeowner, interestingly enough, you brought up a really good point. We talked to the homeowner about whether or not they had pressure issues in their house. And they said, yeah, as a matter of fact, we can only use one appliance at a time, like the dishwasher, you can't take a shower. I'm like, well, I'm pretty sure we know what the issue is. You need to replace your service line from the curb stop in. And they came out and took a look at this and said, oh my God. So I'm sure this is happening in a whole bunch of different places in town, right? So
I think there's three of those left on the customer side on Pine Street, to my knowledge.
Jill, I'm not sure we answered Joel's question on including the service lines within the project.
It's up to you.
Well, when you say including them, you mean like allowing the homeowner to replace them at the same time with, or giving them the option, not the town paying for it, right?
That's all up
In
to you.
Middlebury, it's all part of the project. They tell me, because eventually when they get every street done, everybody gets a brand new line and everybody pays for the lines because they're losing water. Here, we talked about working with the homeowner on a payment plan to replace that. And I'm good either way about it, but to me is if we got 19 of them, let's say it's $1,000 to, you're talking $8 million project and 19 of them got to replace for $1,000 a piece, you're talking $19,000 over.
Yeah.
I mean, if we're leaking, we
don't.
did a Pine Street,
It's not
and
1,000.
Joe keeps telling us we're still, our pump times are about the same, maybe a little bit less. But we need to go all the way, basically almost to the faucet.
Yeah.
Not to the faucet.
To the meter.
But if we were gonna do that, we should have done that starting with Pine Street. I mean, now you
Well,
made them pay
I
that.
brought that in, but it was told that, well, we didn't do what was saying, Valley? The easement, all the easements we had to have to dig up on their front lawn.
That's right.
And I remember they used to pull them. They'd hook on and go in and put a roll of copper in the basement and hook onto it and pull it right up.
Sometimes it works.
Sometimes it works. You don't know until you try it. If it doesn't work, well, guess what? We're digging up your lawn.
I think saying to the homeowners, like, it will only be this certain amount of money and we can do it all at once, I think they would do it. Like when you guys repaired the water main in front of our house on East Street, both we and our neighbor across the street both had the feeder lines redone by that company, Masterson, I think it was. And so, I mean, I think if you offer people that option and it's less expensive because the line's already exposed, I think they would do it.
What does that do to the project, Jill, in terms of adding that in?
So basically, adding that into the project means that Steve has to work with a lawyer, I think, and get you guys easements. He has to now include these areas into the environmental and the archaeological. So I think it adds like a significant amount of design and legal costs to your waterline project versus you guys maybe having some type of thing where you're encouraging the homeowner to contract with
Same company. Yeah.
whoever to replace their service lines, because they probably all 70 that there are in the system are probably leaking pretty awesomely well, and it would be great to get them replaced. I just don't know if putting them into the project with additional engineering, archaeological, legal, and possibly interest rates is worth adding into the scope of your
Don't forget
project.
liability.
I
Yeah.
can tell you the line that goes from your cursor into that house right there, that's 1/2-inch copper.
Right here? We
Yeah.
found a bunch of those on Pine, interestingly enough. We probably found.
You
4.
know, at least it's copper. 1/2 inch probably doesn't give them as much flow as they'd like, but they probably have okay pressure.
So one of the other concerns, we have been talking about this, by the way, at our monthly meetings as well. And you know, we're sitting here trying to look out for your interest and at the same time say, okay, how do we balance this within the project? One of the other concerns that we have about the homeowners not taking this on themselves as the lead, and I mean, you folks may, as one way to do this, encourage them financially somehow to do that. But remember, there's also a ton of things on everybody's private property. We have a bunch of these water lines that run underneath people's porches. A lot of the foundations are 100+ years old. There's a bunch of liability from the town's perspective. I think if you folks take this on, there's a whole bunch of things in people's lawns you don't know about.
I don't want to take that on.
Landscaping, there's all sorts of, I'm just saying it's a bigger issue. I agree with everything that you're trying to accomplish, and I think it's the right way to go. I just think it should require some thought. If the individual owner is the person that hires the contractor, and there's some way to encourage that to happen, I think you folks, from the town's perspective, are going to be a lot better off in the long run. Number one, I think you're gonna spend less money.
About knocking on the door and saying,
a whole
hey,
bunch of stuff.
we're going by with an 8-inch main, do you want us to replace your line?
Right, like you can have to take 2 showers at the same time.
You're looking at a perfect example. We bought our house 34 years ago. And I said, the galvanized line's gotta go. Scott came over, they dug in the middle of the road, Halleck did, and they pulled it through. We didn't go through an archaeological study, we didn't go through an easement.
But back then they didn't require it.
Right, if you're using federal money, if you're using federal money, that's a requirement.
No, the town paid for it, the former homeowner paid the town to do it.
Right, the town doesn't have that responsibility if they use their own money, right? They do have that responsibility if they use state or federal funds. But you can imagine, I mean, just think about this, right? Here's an example, right? Let's just say you were running water line to this house, right? You've got to go underneath the sidewalk, you've got to deal with these trees, you've got to deal with some foundation, who knows what's in the lawn. And half the homeowners, a lot of this stuff was buried 100 years ago.
I'm sure that one came from West Street, because that's
I
the
did a
gas station.
septic tank one time. I replaced a cesspool with a septic tank, and right in the middle of the cesspool was a galvanized water line. I ended up replacing the whole.
Right, and those are the things that you're going to.
I think, you know, we already know when the plan for this all to happen. If we can get letters out to all the people that are within that planned area and say, look, this is what we're doing. You will have an opportunity at that time to hire on your own the same company, and it's gonna be a lot cheaper than you hiring it.
Exactly.
Whatever, to give them enough advance warning that, you know, it's coming and we don't hear this. I was surprised.
Well, if they got galvanized, I'd say we tell them it needs to be
Well, that's
replaced. We
fine,
don't give them
but-
a choice.
Yeah, you may want to subsidize some.
There are what, 3 on Pine Street, they're still galvanized? You know?
Do they look like that picture that you showed?
That
One
was
of them
one.
was.
That's one of them.
Yeah, they're pretty gross. I know of a couple on other streets that that one of them needs their meter replaced, and we can't replace the meter because if we touch it, the service line's gonna break in half. Right, and so, like there's some that are just beyond, and there is wording in the current ordinance to really enforce some required replacements.
And that's what we say, you know, you are required to replace your service line at your.
Because you have a galvanized line, you're
Because-
required to replace it at the time we replace
Right,
it.
but you have to give them enough warning, you
Yeah.
can't just.
And for everyone else, it'll be cheaper if you do it and you'll get better water
Yeah.
flow. right?
But from the curb stop to the inside the cellar wall where the meter is, if they got, well, we got a little bit of pressure, we don't, you know, we're only the two of us. I know a couple over there, just the two of us, and it's sprinkling like crazy in the ground. In this gravel, it never plums
If
up.
it's
It don't-
galvanized, we tell them it needs to be replaced. It's that simple. It's in our
It's
ordinance.
required to be replaced.
I didn't ask for every line to be replaced on all these phase two. I just asked for the galvanized ones.
Yep, well, we're pretty close to having an answer on all the ones that are galvanized within the area of this particular project, and I don't think that it would be the worst thing ever to tell people they have 4 years or 3 years or 2 years or whatever to get them replaced. And I don't know if you want to offer some type of financial incentive to assist them, or if you just want to encourage them to get it done.
Yeah, and maybe the town says, hey, we're willing to put $1,000 toward, you know, anybody's service line replacement as a carrot to get them to do it. There's certainly some savings.
Just add that on to the debt.
Well, it's not that much though.
Michelle.
Even if we
Well,
did something
I
like
understand that, but if you have 17 of them or 70 of
Well, I
them or
just did
whatever.
mine last year and now you're giving $1,000, you're gonna give me.
Well, that's what I'm
$1,000 'cause I
saying. I
hired it.
mean,
It's not
if you, yeah, but if you guys start that now, you should have started it in the beginning.
Straight, right.
When
I mean,
did-
we did West Street, then we did Pine Street.
We
you
did
know.
North Street.
Now
when we
you're
did
saying you,
Sunset.
but it's we. Let's-
Well,
let's
I'm just
leave it
saying,
at we.
Well,
We, you,
Hold
we,
on,
and the
hold on.
town,
It's really.
the town did that.
Ah, Well, but that's why we figure something
You
out. But
inherited
also
it.
we can, there are a great number of positives to having this done.
But
It's not necessarily like you have to replace your line, it's old, sorry. I think we can.
There's the
we can
revolving
put a
loan
very
fund.
Positive spin on
But
this,
there's
right?
also,
Agreed.
there's already a built-in incentive, which is if the line is already exposed, you're already saving money, right?
Yeah.
So like.
Well,
we-
they're not exposing their service line. We're
No,
just
Yeah,
but
it's
exposing
like where
curb.
it
the
connects.
curb.
Yeah, where it
Will be
connects.
The
exposing
contractor's
curb.
mobilized in that.
Right.
Right,
But
so
to
what we
me-
can say is there is an incentive, right? Because if you do it right now, you're gonna pay X amount versus what you would have paid.
And-
And I think we just.
Yeah, you're gonna have to pay somebody to mobilize and.
I mean, you can make it where it's like, is your pressure really bad? Your line might look like this.
and
Get one that actually doesn't have anything in the middle of
And
it.
I get it, Michelle, you say the $1,000, but if even those 19 are never replaced. And.
We
Joe,
just shut them off. It's that simple. It's in our ordinance that if they have galvanized line and we suspect it's leaking, we can shut it off and tell them to replace it.
So your current ordinance doesn't state if it's a galvanized
think it
line.
did.
It just states that if we can prove that they're leaking, we could require them to replace it in a particular period of time, and if they don't, we can shut it off.
So I think that's what we say.
I
about
think
the
Jeepers can
galvanized
add that to the ordinance.
Yeah, so like we could
Well, that
certainly add
ordinance might
that.
be changing.
But we're spending what, $4,500 a month on electricity and pumping?
Yeah. And
Over
that's a really
time.
good, That's a really
$1,000
good-
doesn't look like a bad investment.
that's a good point, Joel. I mean, you know, if you're not, let's just say we're able to offer something for an incentive for these folks. If you don't do that, you're gonna pay for it on the operations side, right?
So Michelle's line springs a leak out where she is. It's a private line. You're gonna give her $1,000?
She's not paying the water bill.
You might.
I know.
And this is not taxes.
It's just an idea.
Okay, time check.
Yeah.
It was time check an hour ago.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Looks
Thank
great.
you.
Thank
I
you.
did,
Thanks,
it's frustrating.
No questions.
Thank you very much, Steve and Jill.
Yes.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
The Oreo that he's holding.
Oh.
Is there any action, Steve, that you need the select board to take as a part of the presentation?
No, only that, you know, they reviewed and I guess we'll provide comments on the 60% design if there is any.
Okay.
I think we did that throughout.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Steve and Joe.
Thank you very much. Have a good night.
All right, are you
Okay.
guys all set with me?
Yep.
Yeah,
Yes,
Certainly am.
Yeah.
Thank you.
we'll be out of here by 10:15 now.
Good night.
Okay,
Night.
we've done number 3, number
Minutes.
2. Yeah, review and approval of February 12th, February 26th, May 28th, and 24 meeting, and add on tonight, carry over from a previous meeting minutes of May 13th, 2024,
And 20, May 13th and 20.
then May 20th.
I looked at those two, right?
Yeah, I think.
May
we did.
13th and 20. I didn't look at the two today. I
Oh.
make a motion to accept May 13th and May 20th with whatever changes I gave you, which if I recall right were many.
Yeah,
And you didn't look at.
Second.
No, I did not.
There's a
do the
motion
two
and a second.
today.
Okay, I looked over the 12th to the 26th of February, and they look fine to me. So, but we'll just add those 2 minutes.
so who seconded that?
Peter,
Thank you.
all those in favor? Any discussion on those? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, okay. Authorized accounts warrant, payable warrant, and liquor, tobacco licenses.
Yes, I
Down
signed it.
there.
What's the
All
warrant?
signed. What's the warrant?
106, 9/13/46. Did you sign these?
Motion to accept.
No, that's it.
Okay.
All we have to do is read it.
Read it. Okay, select board roundtable, Ian?
Update on the bus shelter, met with TDT and property owners over at Stony Hill Business Park, and they will be taking that on and working with TDT to put in the second shelter that we received from them.
Which
So
business park?
Stony Hill.
Oh, Stony Hill.
Yeah.
That's not what I thought you said.
What
I
did I
was
say?
like, where the hell's
I
that?
don't know.
I thought you
It's
said
a third-
Sunny Hill.
It's a third business park we put in that no one knows about yet. Yeah, so they're gonna work on that. David Losdorf, Kevin Harper will be working to have that installed in a location. So that's great. So we'll have 2 bus shelters. I continue to work and try to figure out if we're able to get a shelter on Park Place somewhere. So I continue to work on that. I'm also working on a project which we discussed previously, some safety upgrades to the town offices. I've met and chatted with a few people, and we'll maybe have something to present in a couple of weeks, just some ideas to go forward. And that's all from me.
Okay, Michelle?
The only thing I would say is Ian and I actually talked today about the subdivision regs. What did
Correct.
Kevin say? He's gonna put it on his next meeting, Kevin
Correct.
Hansen.
So
So-
it was last left with the planning commission, who approved our changes for the updated unified development regulations. And there had been discussions about how permitting was going to be handled with ADUs in terms of things clashing with going one direction and then having it turn into an ADU with new construction. So we're gonna try, I think the planning commission Kevin's gonna put it on his agenda, and he's gonna discuss that. Michelle and I will probably attend that, perhaps with Kevin Brown, and sort of hash out a possible solution. That means it would then come back to us for that final approval, and then I think final public, because that needs to be on the August 13th ballot.
Right.
And there isn't a tremendous amount of time between now and
No.
August 13th, so,
Because we have to do an open meeting.
correct.
Public
Yes,
meeting.
and public meeting for people to discuss it, and then if we have no changes, then it would go and be put on the ballot for voting.
Mhm.
But everything else, it's just a couple of little things that need to be worked on potentially, but that's almost ready to go and get
Wow.
voted on, which is great.
Okay. Anything else, Michelle?
Nope.
Jessica?
The Bicycle and Pedestrian Safety Committee wanted to hold a sort of snap meeting, like unscheduled meeting last week, to try to vote on some of the things that Valerie had been working with them on, but they weren't able to get enough people to attend. And I tried to vote, but I'm not really a member of the committee, so they weren't counting me.
Well,
And
don't they have to notice their meetings?
they do.
They did.
Oh, okay.
They did
Yeah.
that. It's at least 48 hours.
Okay.
Right,
And
but
they did
it's sort of an ongoing problem.
Right.
And so they're going to try again early next week. So we'll see if they're able to do that. And then for the library, you guys already know the things that they're working on, but they are going to come back to the select board with that outdoor space that they had
The
talked about with the
classroom.
ARPA money, right? So that they can run programming out there. So I don't know if you all know, but their summer camps are free. So, you know, normally a week at summer camp is like $250 odd for a partial day.
Mhm.
That's a lot of money if you imagine all the weeks in the summer. So those camps are free. So, you know, if they can expand their offerings, that's really great.
Direct competition with our rec.
No, there's a huge wait list for the rec department. There's no competition. There's more than enough kids to go around. So anyway, they'll come back when they're ready with that, hopefully like in a month, to show just some initial ideas and get feedback.
And for the library, we're still waiting on the quotes from the 3 contractors that we spoke to regarding energy equipment updates. And we're still waiting on the MERP assessments.
Right.
And hopefully we should get those soon. I'll follow up.
Don't we have something we have to do with the porch there?
Yes, and that's an
Yeah.
RFP.
Hope to clone myself.
Mhm.
Did you guys talk to Frida about the RFPs? Is that something she can work on, since she's already involved with the,
Yeah, we
the other
did,
side
we
of
did
things?
talk about that for
Okay.
other projects, but not the library specifically, because you and I had the
Right.
meeting. I have the information, so I just don't have the time.
okay,
Okay. Anything
What do you
else?
do with all your?
can we,
I
well, so
blow it
for
off.
that, given that it's something that needs to be done, what's the best way? Can Frida and I take that on, something like that, using some RFPs that we've used before? Can you pass me the information?
Because it's not a grant funded project, it's an entirely town funded project. It really is not a grant administration thing to do. But she is, I mean, if we can ask her.
Okay.
She is interested in taking on some limited project management aspects of some of the projects, such as RFPs.
Okay.
But that's as far as we've gotten.
Well, I would recommend asking her about that. I'm willing to help, since I was involved with that project, just because I know that the library has been waiting quite a long time for that. So, and the steps look terrible.
Oh, I know, it's painful.
And
I took a look at those steps, actually, you would say that terrible, and they do look terrible, but you know, are they in need of completely rebuilding or scraping and painting?
My approach was going to be to do just what was done in front of Holly Hall. The same kind of material, the same general scope. I just have to put it together, and the dimensions and the materials and.
Need a permit
For what?
to do that. We should have had a permit through Labor and Industry for the porch out here.
Public building.
They looked the
Yeah.
the guy that does our area was out, and one of the other fire marshals asked me if we pulled a permit, and I said,
Okay.
no, but he says, I'm not gonna rat you out.
Public building needs required a state permit.
Even for just repairs, not changing it.
Doesn't matter.
Gotta
So
get that dollar
construction is
so
still
they can
public
pay.
building.
Bristol
Okay.
Water.
Or not.
Anything?
No.
Well, yes, if you wanted to pass that on, like Jess and I could take it on.
Yeah.
And work on the RFP for that. if you'd like
Sure.
to say. Sure.
I just,
Okay, done.
I have a
Okay,
couple
good.
quick
Yeah,
things.
pass me all the information. you have.
Congratulations, you
I mean,
just gave
You just
something up.
delegated.
You have so many RFPs that we can pull from in terms of what
Or
you've
at
done
least come up with
before.
a draft.
Yeah,
right? And then
exactly.
you just look over it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Valerie's, we have Eric have any intentions of cutting I noticed a few of the ash borer trees are just completely gone.
They're working on it. Eric is meeting with our ad hoc tree committee of Josh and John and Meredith. And they're coming up with a plan to take down. the
Yeah, he
trees.
was out today making lists.
Okay, and then,
No, I don't know if John ever got up to look at the cemetery, because that tree is still leaning up.
yeah, I
there.
saw that.
Oh, the one on your, yeah, because,
Yeah.
The Barney Cemetery,
because,
Sheldon.
Sheldon asked me, I said, you better talk to Peter, because he knows way more about it than me.
Yeah,
And then-
I think it's a danger because it's.
Well, that's what he
broke off
said,
and
it's gonna take out some more
Yeah,
stones.
And Valerie or the board, are we not gonna have time to do sidewalks this year?
Well, maybe in the fall. But yeah, that one,
I know like West Pleasant, but here again, if we gotta dig up down through there.
well, the next one on the list was gonna be Garfield Street.
Mhm.
And I actually measured this physically walked the sidewalk and measured certain sections before I lost my keys, but I just haven't been able to get back to it.
Well, I mean, is sidewalk both sides? There's a sidewalk on both sides of Garfield. Is one
I
of them really
measured
good?
both, but
One of them really good and one of them not?
it's more like the ends, each end toward Mountain Street are bad. So I was trying to
Okay.
gauge how far they needed to be done. But
Yeah, I guess it's the sidewalk down by Bristol Market. Is there sidewalk under where
Yeah.
they park those cars?
Yeah.
People park over the top of them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Even though there's a sign that says, please don't block sidewalk.
Well,
Compact cars only.
Because, you know, the
Chris
one
can take care
down
of that.
from Munsell Avenue going east on West Pleasant, on the south side is
Oh, I
pretty
know.
bad. That's really bad.
I completely agree.
So,
Yeah.
and then I got a little update on the Warren sidewalk. Did I send you guys that stripe
Yeah.
in
Mhm.
the road? And from the administrator said, well, a lot of people don't understand it yet. Hasn't slowed traffic down much, but people do walk on the white strip, so.
Okay.
Yeah, I asked how it was working and not very well yet.
Mhm.
So, that's all I have.
It takes time
Yeah.
to change
And town
behavior.
administrator's report.
Pass.
Pass. Correspondence report, anything you see?
Just the correspondences we received recently from the state officials in response to our letter to the governor.
And I
Nothing
understand,
to the, nothing from the governor yet.
Yeah.
Nothing.
I understand heard this from the director of home. Eric's position,
What?
Eric Warren's position. It's his
Emergency management.
Emergency management. He signed for a grant, maybe for Lower Notch Road. Did we put in a grant for Lower Notch Road? He didn't know how many thousands of dollars was coming, but he said he signed the paperwork the other day. You guys getting a check coming.
Great.
Okay,
And he goes, I think it's Lower Notch Road, but I want 100% sure.
we've got a bunch of different FEMA.
Because I asked him about,
projects.
I was telling him about the water debacle on Pine Street. He goes, well, I just signed it.
I asked him if he was gonna, sees how this is gonna be Phil's last run, he wouldn't have run this time, but this is gonna be his last run. I asked Eric if he was gonna run for governor in 2 years.
Oh, my gosh.
Okay.
Wow.
Anyway, executive session, kind of personnel matter?
Nope.
Nothing. Okay, I'd entertain to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
There's a second.